Welcome in to Check the Mic. Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson, live on YouTube. Today, Sam, a monster show. Looking back at some NFL draft myths and discussions that we've had. We'll give you just a little, were they true, were they false? How should we think about these things going forward? We struggled with a name for this, but I think it's going to be a fun show with some intense draft discussions here.
Yeah, and, looking back on how our thinking has evolved on certain topics, because most of these things come up every year or every other year, they're very consistent, right? Do you take the old guy? Do you take the young guy? How much does running back value matter? All this kind of stuff. It's all the same conversations we're having.
Every year.
Year after year after year with different names attached to them. But I think our thinking has evolved, certainly in a lot of these, maybe not all of them, whereas other people out there, not to name names, it's like they just think that one way and they're never going to change their mind on it.
I think it's going to be a fun one, and it's all brought to you by FanDuel, and it's coming to you from...
Where, Steve?
Will just say it, then we'll talk about it later. We have a new billionaire who has thrown his money around. He has thrown his money around properly to rename our studio.
Yeah.
And so we'll be back to a split-named studio here, back and forth. Today, we're coming at you from the Mike Vrabel is part of the Bill Belichick coaching tree studio.
See, this is how, sometimes billionaires are billionaires because they're geniuses, and sometimes they just stumble into luck, right? Like, who would have known that you drop a Mike Vrabel studio name and all of a sudden Mike Vrabel's in the news?
I know. All of a sudden.
Just
to be clear.
The Midas touch.
To be clear, this did not come in at midnight or anything last night. This was not on the back of the TMZ-like rumors. This was last week. Door. This was last week. Right.
The plaque was already on the building.
We already had the name. And it just timed up. So here we are. You might be right. Forget it. Forget it. Coaching tree. Because that was your thing, right? You said.
I think he's part of the Belichick.
He's part of the tree. I disagree.
Yeah.
But our billionaire Michael
is on my side.
Is completely on your side. Can't remember if we could say his name or not, but just Michael. It could be any Michael.
Right. I think you're always safe dropping the first name.
Yeah. Michael. Let us know, Michael, if we could say your last name. If you want attribution. You're a billionaire. You can do whatever you want. All right. So, again, today's show, we've got 10. We're calling them draft myths. But these are discussion points that are, as you said, show up every year in the draft. There might be some specific ones that we'll throw back to, like the 2018 draft class. How much does QB production matter?
We got some old college.
Yeah, we got some old clips.
From the old studio?
It
doesn't exist anymore?
We should throw up the IFB to make sure we hear it.
That's true.
Running back in the first round. This debate, healthy every single year. Pass rush upside versus production. Can you take a nose tackle in the first round? Age for upside. We got all sorts of things to discuss. You ready to go?
Yeah.
I'm excited for this one. All right, let's go back.
Your baby.
What's that?
This has been your baby. You're driving this train.
I am, and then, hopefully you'll contribute a little bit.
I mean, I'll give it a shot.
That would be great. All right, first draft myth or discussion here. How much does QB production in college absolutely matters when projecting quarterbacks to the NFL, and nothing exemplifies this quite like the 2018 draft class.
Yeah.
Where Baker Mayfield was the most productive quarterback coming out, and we staked our claim on Baker as a prospect at that time.
Yeah, that was a really interesting, and still is, I think, a really interesting draft class for a number of reasons. But I think it definitely is one that has shaped our approach to the whole draft thing. Like, I have that 1998, draft preview magazine at home, the Peyton Manning, Ryan Leaf thing, right? And I think that draft changed the way the NFL evaluates quarterbacks quite significantly, because you read the articles from the time, and it was so clear and so obvious that Peyton Manning was the guy, right? And yet at the time it was a coin flip. And actually the poll within the magazine lent Ryan Leaf over Peyton Manning, right? And I honestly think that was such a conclusive, resounding win for Peyton Manning that in hindsight, the learning that the NFL took from that was, you know what, the mental aspect of this, the psychological makeup, is he a gym rat, that kind of thing, that's way more important than we thought it was, right? We need to lean heavily on that, even if it's only sort of excluding certain people rather than leaning into the certain people. Like, we need to really focus on that. I think this one is interesting because you've got the Josh Allen the physical freak who was not necessarily spectacularly productive was at Wyoming, et cetera, et cetera. And then you've got the uber productive player in Baker Mayfield, who actually had, physical tools and stuff. But it's just that one at the time was very clear that you lean with the crazy productive guy who also has a cannon for an arm. But actually, so far, you've got Baker, who's been good, albeit very volatile up and down. You've got Josh Allen, who's been an MVP. You've got Lamar Jackson, who's been a multiple-time MVP. And then you've got all of a sudden Sam Darnold wins the Super. Like, the whole thing is chaos after a few years.
So I want to go back to that time and just this entire production, QB production mattering in college, this entire discussion.
But Josh Allen's the guy that's going to kind of break the analysis going forward.
I want to just paint the picture of what was going on back then. We were at PFF, obviously, at the time. PFF college data had started in 2014. And I've told this story before, but I was absolutely convinced that having quarterback college throw-by-throw data would change the QB eval process, that we were going to nail it. I was convinced that we were going to be on point, and if teams listened to the data, there'd be no more busts. And there was reasons.
The silver bullet.
I really thought that was the case. I was wrong, but I thought that was the case at the time. And things were lining up along those lines in a good way, right? We were years removed from a, quote, toolsy type of quarterback who probably was not productive in the NFL. We were years removed from that even working.
Hadn't had one for a while.
Like Brett Favre was one of the best examples where he just...
for a while, he was basically like the only example of a guy who had no accuracy in college, suddenly finding accuracy at the next level. Yeah. He was the guy that Allen was being compared to. Like, look, it can happen. It's like, yeah, but that was 92 or whatever, 91. That hasn't happened for a long time.
And so I was convinced, Sam, coming off of a run, I'll read through it, because, like I said, the PFF grading started in 2014. I was convinced that the 2014 draft class, where they played college in 2013, that the grading would not have loved guys like Blake Bortles, who went number 3, and he was more of a toolsy guy.
That was the other thing, by the way. This would have been one of the first years where we had complete careers.
We had their whole career. Yeah. And Baker had 3 elite seasons. We'll talk about our Baker take in a second here. I thought E.J. Manuel, the first rounder in 2013, would not, just eye test wise, would not have had good data behind him. I thought certainly not Jake Locker or Blaine Gabbert, who both went in the first round. And so my theory was, if PFF data existed at the time, if all this advanced data there's no way these toolsy quarterbacks go as high as they did. And then the Christian Hackenberg thing happened. And when we were doing research for this, I went back and we of course brought up Hackenberg, right? The data was awful on him, and he still goes in the second round. And we were like, how is this even possible? This should never happen for teams again. So we were going to this 2018 draft saying, all right, I'm fairly confident the toolsy types have not worked for a while. So I can't remember how much of the Allen clip that we have, but you made the point on Allen that year, we don't think he's Christian Hackenberg. We don't think he's an awful prospect. We called him a late first, certainly a developmental guy. But these types of developmental quarterbacks had not hit in a while. Versus, and then we had Baker Mayfield with 3 years of data. Let's hear what we said. Good. Yeah, let's hear what we said about Baker Mayfield at the time.
I feel like we've just unloaded our entire database on the world right now, showing why Baker Mayfield's not only our top QB, but our top player in the entire draft.
No, I mean, the bottom line here is it comes down to what your opinion is on his attitude and his off-the-field stuff. If you're comfortable with that, there is no way you can look at the tape and decide that another one of these quarterbacks is a better option than Baker Mayfield right now. Even in terms of projecting a floor, forgetting about the ceiling, about how good they can be, even just projecting how safe a quarterback is, I think you've got to come to the conclusion that Mayfield is the safest of these guys because he is the best in all of these areas that we've looked at.
If he was 6'3", is he just the lock number 1 overall pick?
Consensus number 1 pick, and nobody's even talking about anybody else.
Look at those young guys breaking it all down. Sweaters, collared shirts, you're looking nice.
Yeah, we looked a little, we've let the standards slip a little bit in terms of attire over the years.
We had a dress code back then.
Yeah. Maybe we,
No, it's better this way. We're laid back. I want to wear a hoodie. I want homage. I want homage shirts. I was just telling you off air. I want an homage deal. If you guys are listening, I'll wear your shirts every show. They're comfortable.
So there's two sides of this, really. There's the Baker side and then there's the Josh Allen side. The Allen side, I think, is more easy to draw the conclusions from. Now, people will probably draw the wrong conclusions in that we're going to spend the next 15 years looking for the next Josh Allen, whereas realistically he was probably one of one. And even at the time, we'll get to the next clip in a bit, but we kind of said, look, that's within his range of outcomes to become the player that he's become. It's just very unlikely that he becomes that player. And he's hit the crazy small side of that range of outcomes. The takeaway from the Baker thing, I think, is more difficult to pin down because I think some of that is right in that, like, one of the things, like, he does have the physical tools to be great, I think. I think we're seeing that the last couple of years. Like, what he's been able to do scrambling is incredibly good. He is able to make all the throws. His arm is very, very good and still underrated. So I think a lot of that is still true. His floor is still reasonably high. Like, he can be a bad quarterback only when he's playing through like a busted shoulder and stuff. And, I'm not quite sure. Like, one of the things that I think we not missed, but didn't spend enough time discussing maybe at the time was, Baker Mayfield's play under pressure was exceptionally good at Oklahoma, but he barely ever saw pressure because the offensive line was good, because everything about that offense was really good.
And there's nuance to pressure, right? When you have one player, sneaking through the line, but you have enough room in the pocket to sidestep him, that's a different type of pressure than the walls are caving in on you. And I think Baker faced the latter, right? He faced, one guy might move him off the spot a little bit, but you're in this big pocket in the Big 12.
But that's the thing. I think what we didn't really analyze was what happens if the entire picture is completely different consistently. Like, what happens if you dial the slider all the way to the other end, and does it still hold that a guy is good or bad under pressure? And this was right at the time where we were, first breaking out stable metrics and that kind of thing, like what stays consistent year to year, focus on the play, from a clean pocket, not the play under pressure, and that kind of stuff. And actually, one of the more important things, I think, is, well, what happens if his entire environment changes and you go from like pristine, perfect supporting cast to like, what happens if it's ropey now? And that's where I think, again, this is always going to become more art than science, because I don't know that there's a clean answer to that. Like, everyone is going to struggle more with a worse supporting cast around them, but I don't know that it's projectable if you can figure out how much worse they're going to struggle.
So, coming out of that, and look, I'm just using 2018 as an example. You had Baker, who we were very confident in, Allen, who, again, was not a bad college quarterback. He had an outstanding junior year. Not great his senior year. A lot of the arguments around him, well, he's playing with Wyoming and supporting cast and everything. I didn't love those arguments, but I think at the end of the day, they proved true that he did have that incredible upside, and then he hit it, right? I mean, the things that you can't project is how hard he worked, because his first couple of years in the league were interesting too, because the accuracy, the decision-making was still a question for Josh Allen, but by year 3, like week 1, boom, it just looks like a superstar. Yeah. So he worked hard to get better. There was that it factor in his first couple of years, though, where he did elevate that offense, even if it wasn't. And so here's my ultimate point. I think we were looking at the wrong data points too. And we'll talk about Lamar Jackson in a second, because we had just had our throw-for-throw accuracy numbers. We had all these things that, like, Allen wasn't that accurate. We'll talk about accuracy more later too. Lamar wasn't that accurate, but they both had special playmaking ability, especially Lamar. Like, he was productive in college, but there were certain, throw-for-throw accuracy numbers weren't great. There were certain things that weren't great. We did not. I mean, we made a strong case for build the offense around Lamar, his running ability. He's which they did, right? Like, there's an article still out there at PFF, which I wrote, called "The Case for Building the Offense Around Lamar Jackson," and made the point he was not a run-around quarterback. He was they designed the whole run game around him, which opens up the entire field for him, mitigates some of his weaknesses, and puts the defense in a bind. And the Ravens have leaned into that, and he's a 2-time MVP, as you said. So it's just a fascinating draft class. And then even the players after that, the players who would have been great, say, production type of players in college. You've got Justin Fields, Mac Jones, Zach Wilson, those are the types of players that would have popped to the top, whether you're using grading, advanced grading, the derivatives of it, and it just hasn't materialized the way I thought it might back in 2014 and 15.
One of the things that I don't like again, part of this is like, can you fairly and honestly evaluate things in hindsight even? One of the things I don't like is when people start talking about, well, Josh Allen had that it factor from day one, like it was always going to work and blah, blah. I think that's easy to say because it worked out and because he did improve in a bunch of different areas and became basically a different quarterback now than he was at the time. And we don't even know necessarily where to put that credit. Is that all on Josh Allen? Is that working with a private quarterback coach? Is that Brian Daboll? Is that Stephon Diggs being traded for? Like, where does the credit lie for this giant jump in production in Josh Allen, largely between years 2 and 3? And it's, almost certainly a little piece of all of those things. But my problem with he had the it factor from day one. We always believed in him. And I'm sure they did, but that's also true for a bunch of quarterbacks that didn't work out. Like, it's easy to say when he becomes amazing. It's like, well, we had faith from day one. It's like, yeah, but the Bears had faith in Trubisky until they didn't. And the Broncos had faith in Tebow. And, like, there was a period in time where people could have made the exact same arguments for Tebow. Look, he just beat Pittsburgh in the playoffs with that one dagger throw. He's just a gamer. He just wins. And then, then he doesn't because he's not actually very good, right? Eventually, the wheels fall off that, and you can only kid yourself for so long unless the guy becomes really good. So I don't know that there's necessarily truth or signal to this idea of, we had faith. We always knew he was going to find a way to turn it around, because there's a bunch of quarterbacks that people made the exact same arguments for that didn't ever find the way out of that. And they just never got good enough for you to actually justify stringing along any further.
And I say this a lot too, Sam. If your underlying process or your underlying data or scouting grades or whatever you're using as a process, if it's good overall, don't worry about outliers, right? I actually don't like when people say, this guy really made me rethink my process. Well, then your process isn't very good. If your process is good, an outlier doesn't make you change things. And so at the time, we could have easily chalked that up to Allen. Oh, so Allen is an outlier in his own respect, right? Because he hit the way he did. But we did go through a stretch of the toolsier type of quarterbacks, including Justin Herbert, right? Who I think improved. Herbert, Allen, Mahomes. You could add Lamar. I mean, the toolsy type of quarterbacks hit and became stars and superstars. But I don't think there's a clear-cut answer at the quarterback position. I think you can use data and information at other positions and get in the ballpark really well. I don't think you could do it at quarterback. And now, we'll get to what you said about Allen at the time in a second here. But now I think we've devolved from, like, the beauty of why we wanted to use PFF grading and data is because it factored in every play. And it's like, well, if you factor in 500 dropbacks, like you're going to get a pretty good profile on these players. I feel like we've devolved in the data space now to just single metrics. And it's all over social media. Like, this guy's bad at, sack rate. This guy's bad at accuracy. This guy's bad. And you just take this one. This guy, 20-yard throws are terrible. And we just take this one number now. And many people do. They just take this one number and project it out, or two numbers, or a couple little thresholds, or whatever it may be. And I think that makes it worse. And I think if you're doing it at the quarterback position, you're either going to overfit to try to get Allen in there and to get Mahomes looking good in your data, or it's just not going to work over time.
But also binary analysis and outcomes. Like, it's this guy will be good, won't be good, yes or no. The funny thing is, like, we were wrong on Josh Allen in terms of, I don't think either one of us really thought that he was likely to become the player that he's become, right?
We thought it was a low percentage chance that he hit
correct. But
this high-end outcome.
If you listen to the clip that we're about to play, we actually, it's complete. It stands up. Like, it's completely factually true. He hit the extremely low end of his range of outcomes. Like, this was a possibility for Josh Allen. We just didn't think it was particularly likely to happen. So both right and wrong on in hindsight. Let's run this clip.
To me, he's an IKEA quarterback. There's a big box there, and inside are all the components you need to create this franchise quarterback, but you're going to have to build it. You're going to have to put it together yourself, and I don't know if the instruction manual does you a lot of good. It's in a foreign language. It's not helpful.
You paint beautiful pictures, by the way.
You're going to have to create this quarterback from scratch, and that's a tough thing for NFL teams to do.
Which is true.
Apparently the Bills can speak Swedish because they
All the
grabbed the
pieces were there.
IKEA instructions
Right.
in Swedish.
But the point was that all the pieces
I don't know
were
how we
always
don't
there.
have an IKEA sponsorship after that. Maybe they heard my rant.
Yeah.
My anti-IKEA rant.
But the point being that all the pieces were always there. And that's not true for some of these other quarterbacks that are talked about as toolsy or, have theoretical crazy upside, et cetera. Like, all the tools were always there. It's just, can it be put together by somebody? And again, whether it was the Bills, Allen himself with a private quarterback coach, Stephon Diggs, whatever, the confluence of factors, they all came together and they did put together this quarterback who has now become this, high-end elite, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Again, so it's funny, like, in this world of like, did you like Josh Allen or not? Yes or no, right? I mean, we didn't necessarily love him as a prospect because we thought this was a pretty small chance of this actually hitting. But we acknowledged at the time, there is a chance it hits. And if it hits, it's crazy upside.
And then after the fact there, the quarterbacks who have become, let's say, top 10 caliber starters, it's kind of all over the place. Like Joe Burrow, obviously really productive college quarterback, especially his final year. But Tua was a really productive college quarterback, hasn't become the guy. Herbert from that class we talked about, Jordan Love was a straight-up project, right? He had some decision-making questions coming out of Utah State. He's another toolsy project type of quarterback that's hit. Jalen Hurts as a second rounder was kind of a mix, right? He was productive in college across a couple different systems, but some of the warts that he had in college have also showed up at the NFL, but he's used his running ability and just his ability to do just enough to win across Bama and Oklahoma, and now with Philadelphia. He's been obviously a hit as a second rounder and a Super Bowl winning quarterback. I think after that, production-wise, like who were the great productive quarterbacks? Bryce Young for a couple of years, C.J. Stroud for a couple of years, and there's I'd say Stroud's a hit to this point, and Bryce Young's a little bit more hit or miss. Caleb Williams, Trevor Lawrence was a really productive quarterback, and he had the tools, and so that should have been a slam dunk, right? He had 3 years of 90-plus PFF grades, and he had all the tools. And he's been up and down his career. And maybe he's just turned a corner, but it's in year 6 or year 5. And so it's not a clean process, I don't think, using advanced data projecting the college quarterbacks to the NFL. Certainly not like I thought it would a decade ago.
Yeah, like it almost feels like the discussion is production versus traits at times. And like you said, going into that draft class, there had been genuinely decades, really, between the sort of last real traitsy but no production type of quarterback actually becoming a really good player at the NFL level. And then we had a run where all of them hit for a while. Like we had Josh Allen turn up and become the player that he became. I mean, even Lamar Jackson was in that category a little bit because of some of the fuzziness with his college numbers. Mahomes, obviously, Justin Herbert. I mean, even Daniel Jones was like an outlier for a while on that side of things. And then it was almost like we overcorrected. It's like, oh, look, actually like, the game's changed. All traitsy quarterbacks will turn out good if you just draft them. And then that feels like that's how you end up with an Anthony Richardson drafted in the top 5. Like this guy with no kind of resume at college, but literally the most athletic quarterback of all time if you put together those composite, relative athletic score type measures. Well, let's draft him in the top 5. And that's been fairly well disastrous at this point. I wonder if we just bounce back and forth in these cycles between, toolsy guy's not going to work out for years, and then all of a sudden we're drafting anybody.
We're going to circle back to the Anthony Richardson discussion because one of our later talking points is about accuracy. The most recent trends, though, Sam, is starts. It goes back to Bill Parcells in the 80s. Mm-hmm. Jaden Daniels had a lot of starts. Brock Purdy had a lot of starts. Bo Nix had a lot of starts. He had double what you need, Bo Nix.
Yeah.
So now that's the most recent thing. And now it's like this just, cyclical, what are we looking for at quarterback? Like, if Anthony Richardson was in the draft this year, does he go top 5? Just because in the last 3 years, the trend has been, man, you need that experience. If Ty Simpson had finished strong this year, to apply it to this class, if Ty Simpson had not dropped off from a film perspective down the stretch last year, and he finished great, and he played as well as Fernando Mendoza, we'd be talking more about the starts. I thought that would be the talking point for Ty Simpson. Hey, he's only got 15 starts. What's the actual number? I keep citing
15, I think.
It is.
Exactly.
He's only got 15 starts. That would be the talking point if he hadn't, really fallen off in the second half of the season, because that's the most recent talking point. And honestly, it worked against Sam Darnold for a couple of years. He just had 2 years. I think he had more than 15 starts, but he had only 2 years. He was inexperienced, redshirt sophomore. Honestly, the production numbers going back to Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota, when they were both coming out, they both crushed it from a college production standpoint, especially Jameis's redshirt freshman season and Mariota's Heisman season. They crushed it, and they never became high-end starters. They never got into that top 8. So I'll finish it with that. If you're a consistent listener of Check the Mic, you know how often I say the quarterback position is completely different. The standards are completely different, because the players that we're talking about as, say, misses, if you say Jameis is a miss and Marcus Mariota and Tua and Baker was a miss, but he came back, at any other position, the 15th to 20th best player at their position is obviously a starter and productive, and they're not a bust, right? The bust factor for quarterbacks, like when people say that the NFL's bad at evaluating quarterbacks, I don't buy that. I just think the baseline is high and the hit rates are just naturally going to be low. I don't think there's anything the NFL as a whole can do to fix the quarterback hit rate. I think it's where it is, and some of it's random, some of it's luck, some of it's stuff you see off field, but a lot of it is just there's 32 starters, half the league doesn't like their starters at any given time, and only 8 teams, a quarter of the league, feel great about their starters. So, and if you held every position to that standard, you would say, well, the NFL's got an edge rusher problem. The NFL's got a cornerback evaluation problem. If you just said top 8 or bust, because that's where we are right now. Tua has had a very productive career for the Dolphins, and no Dolphins fan wants him as the starting quarterback because there's a ceiling for him. And there's been points where he's been a top 10, 12, 15 quarterback, wherever you want to put him, and that's considered a bust. Move on. Jameis didn't get a second contract after being a pretty consistently inconsistent starter for the Bucs for 4 years, right? Same with Mariota. 1 playoff games for the Titans. No Titans fans like, man, yearning for the days of Marcus Mariota. You wanted to move on.
I think that's why this is still it's still such a difficult thing for quarterbacks in particular, because I think what is really, really difficult is figuring out who has the potential to be great. That's the missing piece, I think, in all this, is we still do not have a good way of figuring out which quarterbacks that have all the tools to do everything on any given play are going to do it consistently enough to actually be in that top 8 bucket year after year. And that's where you look at, like, where did we get it wrong with Baker Mayfield? Well, the only thing I think that's different is he doesn't seem to have the ceiling of being genuinely great for, 3 years or whatever, right? Like, he can go on a run where he's as good as any quarterback in the NFL, but he doesn't seem to have that in his locker to just be, all right, I'm now going to be a top 5 quarterback for the next 3 years. And that seemed like he definitely did have that at draft time. That was definitely, I think, within his range of outcomes, and he doesn't seem to have hit it. And that's the piece that I don't think we know how to project yet. And that's why I think teams will always still lean towards the toolsy quarterbacks when they have a chance, because it's easier to imagine those guys being the elite quarterback, right? They at least have the arm, the athleticism, like all the things are there for them to be great for a 3-year period. Now we just need to see if they have the psychological makeup or whatever it is, like the special sauce that makes that happen. But that's still the missing piece in all this. Like, how do we find the quarterbacks that are able to do that on a consistent basis?
I'll tell you what I've leaned into over the years is just the quarter, because we wanted to just use hard objective data that separated the quarterback from his situation. But the quarterbacks that elevate their college team, that maybe have to face some adversity, and you could say we used it both ways for Baker. Did he face adversity? Well, he was a walk-on. He was the first ever true freshman walk-on. Like, every one of those data points were like, man, tick that box. And then true freshman walk-on at Texas Tech. And then he just walks on at Oklahoma, tells Bob Stoops, I'm your new starting quarterback, and then goes and puts 3 elite seasons together, including a Heisman. So I thought he ticked that box.
Yeah.
But from a gameplay perspective in the Big 12 for Oklahoma, he didn't face adversity. Mahomes had to elevate Texas Tech in shootouts, and Allen had to elevate a Wyoming team. Lamar was the offense for Louisville and put them on the map for a couple of years from an offensive perspective. So I think that is probably the common thread along a lot of those quarterbacks. And again, you could say, well, Joe Burrow bucked that because he had the two best NFL receivers playing with him in college.
Right.
And there was a stretch where that didn't work for a while. Right? It was like, well, don't draft these USC quarterbacks. They're all throwing to the best dudes with the best running backs with the best offensive line. So Matt Leinart and Matt Barkley and all these USC quarterbacks are never going to work out because they've got the best environment. And then we said the same thing about Bama for a while. Don't draft Bama quarterbacks. They've got the best environment. So there's no one way to look
That's
at
the thing.
all this.
I think the bottom line with quarterbacks is nobody has cracked the code still. Like, it's still art. It's still guesswork to a degree. Like, all you can do is put together the half a dozen things at least that we know have power to them, right? It's not like when I say it's all guesswork, that doesn't mean you can't eliminate a lot of the guesses, right?
Yeah.
Like, you can scratch a Christian Hackenberg off the board for a variety of different ways before we get to the draft. That doesn't mean that the guys you're left with is not still a crapshoot, right? But you can at least limit yourself to a number of people where you say, all right, there's no reason that these 4 guys can't become high-level NFL quarterbacks, or at least none that we can identify from the outside. There's a reason that these 20 guys cannot be NFL quarterbacks, at least using the data that we understand. But I think that's why we're still in this bucket where all you can do is put together the 5 things and say, all right, now take your best guess.
My concluding statement on this, I implore everyone, first off, don't have overconfidence in your quarterback evaluations.
Because you will be wrong.
And then secondly, stop looking for the holy grail of one number to evaluate quarterbacks.
Right.
Been there, done that. Now, an aggregate number is different, right? If you're taking like 50 data points and rolling them up into something or modeling it or whatever, go for it. Try it. But saying like, because at one point we thought, well, accuracy on open throws, this is the thing.
Yeah.
Then it became sack rate, and stop looking for the one number. When it comes to quarterbacks, stop looking for the one number. Implore everybody. So that's one. We'll be here 6 hours. Myth number 2. Discussion number 2, Sam. You cannot take a running back in the first round, specifically the top 10.
Yeah.
How has this worked out in the past? How's it going to work out this year with Jeremiah Love? I'll let you start with your spiel as you break out every show now.
Well, no, let's start with, this has been, we've had this run of running backs, or this evolution of the conversation where, running backs back in the day, they were the most important players in the NFL, and they were the only position for years now. Who was the last non-quarterback, non-running back MVP? Are we going back to Lawrence Taylor? It's been a long time, right? So,
And before that was the kicker.
Yeah, in the strike-shortened season. So it's basically, they were the only position that was seen even remotely close to quarterbacks in value, and then the more the league pivoted to this passing attack, passing game, everything became focused on the quarterback. Every other position, to a degree, got marginalized. And then there was a pushback to devalue the running back position across the board. The league seemed to go along with it. Running back contracts dwindled and disappeared and blah, blah, blah. And then with this rise of analytics, well, then all the data nerds started going, well, let's take this to extremes. Now running backs don't matter at all. Don't even, there's no value to a running back. You can just plug anybody in there, and so never draft a running back in the first round. Never give them second contracts. Running backs should be earning $400,000 a year. They should be the bottom guy on the roster, blah, 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 right? And we took this to hyper extremes to the point where, if you drafted a running back in the second round, you were getting pilloried on certain shows from certain people. So that was, I think, the furthest that this discussion got. And then there became the correction, which is, all right, let's be real about this. There is some value to talent at the running back position. How valuable are they? How high up the draft can you take them, sensibly? How much money can you allocate them as your salary cap? How much should you pay these guys? And then I think you get into the, well, okay, I think, a first-round pick on a running back is not unreasonable if they're crazy talented. Then you get to the discussion, which is where we are now again, which is how high up the first round can you draft these special talents that you identify? The Saquon Barkleys, the Ashton Genties, the Jeremiah Loves, the Bijan Robinsons of the world. How high in the first round can you justify that pick?
Well said, as far as laying the groundwork. So I think there's a lot of bad faith arguments in this discussion, I think. maybe it's in good faith, but it comes across in bad faith. They're always extreme. And so if you're for the running back, if you're for Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, this year Jeremiah Love, you say you just take great players.
Right.
And even me as historically a best player available advocate, which I've repositioned as more like just don't draft for need. Don't overcorrect for need, but draft the best player. So somebody's going to say, just draft the best player. This guy's a star. Plug and play. Jeremiah Love, Bijan, Jahmyr Gibbs, Ashton Genty. Just do it. Then the other end of it, and this is where the analytical people have really leaned heavily in recent years, is the salary thing, which we cite on this a lot. Salary. And Mina was just in the middle of a debates on X yesterday with a lot of people. And so I think that what needs to happen is you blend both. So I'm going to try to do that.
Okay.
So there's the salary discussion that we've cited many times here is if you draft Jeremiah Love at 4 or 5, he's immediately running back 7 when it comes to salary. So let's break that down. I've looked at this a few different ways because I think the analytical people have just focused on salary and surplus value against the salary. So if you draft Love, he's RB7 salary-wise at pick 5, whatever it is. But if you draft an edge rusher, he's 32nd or 34th or whatever that is. But that doesn't tell you how good the player is, right? So I think both variables need to be factored in. You can't just go into the draft and say, well, just draft edge rushers because you're going to have more cap to play with. And you can't just draft the running back because, as Dave Gettleman famously said, this is the best player I've ever seen, Saquon Barkley. He's a 9 in our system. I've never had a 9. I'm drafting the 9, right? You can't just do one or the other. So I'm going to try to look at both things and give you some data using my my PVM metric. So PVM is a measure of production that maps to wins. It's a war-like metric. So you need to have some semblance of how good is the player and then how much money are they getting paid for that value.
Is like that's the element that drives the discussion when it comes to these quote-unquote non-value positions, safety, guard, running back, off-the-ball linebacker to an extent. It's, all right, we understand that there are other positions where you can get a ton of surplus value if you find a really good player, but it's the degree of confidence we have in this specific prospect that we're talking about, which is why we're asking the question of how high can you draft him in the first place, right? It's like the degree. So by definition, all the players that you're trying to make this argument for, you believe are unusually good, which is why you're asking it in the first place. Like everyone knew Quentin Nelson was going to be a superstar guard, which is why anybody was asking the question at all of how high can you draft this guy. So the whole point is you feel unusually good about that guy relative to the random defensive end that you would normally draft in the top 5 or the random offensive tackle just because those are premium positions.
All right, let me go back. Because you're absolutely right? There's that confidence of running back versus
right,
and we're going to have this Jeremiah Love versus
but not
Darnell
even just
Tate.
Running back, like the specific guy that you're talking
whether
about.
It's
like
Nelson
there's a reason, like all these guys that fall into the bucket, it's because we felt that these guys had insane talent relative to just a standard top 5, top 10 NFL draft pick that would normally just get slotted in because they play the valuable positions.
All right, let me try to walk through what I've broken down here a little bit. Let's say I've got this production metric that maps really strongly to wins. If you look at that in a vacuum, you could just list it and say, so the most valuable first rounders from 2023 using this metric in a vacuum. Will Anderson, non-quarterbacks. Will Anderson, Jalen Carter, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and then Bijan Robinson, number 4. In a vacuum, most productive players and a metric that maps directly to wins. Now, where does the positional value come in? And this is there's layers to this thing, right? So when we first had, if you don't add context positionally, you get the old statement, not to call people out again, the old statement, Golden Tate's more valuable than Myles Garrett because you just look at things in a vacuum and just say, well, this number's higher than that number. But you're not taking in what that is relative to their position and scarcity and then the financial component. I think you have to roll all of those factors in.
Let me ask you a question first, because I think one of the arguments that would have been made by the analytics nerds is because quarterback is so overpowering in terms of value, you look at any WAR metric, it's like the first 30 people in the NFL in terms of WAR are all quarterbacks. Like basically, if you don't have a quarterback, nothing matters, right?
Yeah.
That's how you get to running backs don't matter, defense doesn't matter, like anything doesn't matter. Just quarterback's the only thing that matters. So if you strip out quarterbacks, you were saying, non-quarterback value. What is the range or the spread between running backs, edge rushers, other positions, right? So what I'm asking is, if and when you take quarterbacks out of the equation, is the spread between different positions enough for it to actually matter, or is that why they all lent towards surplus values or anything that matters at that point? Because that's the saving. Actually, the difference between good running back and an average edge rusher is it's not moving the needle if you don't have a quarterback.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's just, does it affect the pass game?
Right.
Right, and that's where edge rushers come in. There was a point where, our friends overcorrected into back seven versus pass rushers.
Sure.
And I think they came back around to it.
Well, I don't think
it's
they
just
necessarily said, I think that might have been directionally sound. It's just that back seven, it's
there's
a
dependencies.
Enterprise.
There's a lot of dependencies.
Exactly. That's the thing. Yeah. It's which positions have no dependencies attached to them, because those are the easiest ones to say, well, if you simply draft a good player at that position, you get better. Whereas if a position has a bunch of dependencies attached to it, even drafting a good player at that position might not change anything if all the dependencies still suck.
So I'm using the 2023 class just because they had Bijan and Gibbs in the top 12, right? So Bijan's the fourth most in a vacuum productive player in a metric that actually maps directly to wins. Devin Witherspoon's fifth. Good for the Seahawks. They've got 3 and 5. And by the way, JSN started slow to his career. You can make obviously last year he was right near the top with Will Anderson. Devin Witherspoon's fifth. Jahmyr Gibbs is sixth. Zay Flowers is seventh. And then Jack Campbell for the Lions, by the way, eighth. Okay, so those are your non-quarterbacks, most valuable players. Now, if we adjust it for position, and because if you have a production number, you can actually tie it to dollars, right? If you have a production number that correlates to wins, you could figure out what a win is worth and figure out how much. You just convert that production number basically to dollars, and you get a surplus value in production terms. Surplus value in production terms: Will Anderson, Jalen Carter, Bijan Robinson, Devin Witherspoon. Now, the other way to do it is, okay, that's all in a vacuum. But running backs and edge rushers have different expectations, right? If running backs don't provide as much value, then the higher Bijan is, maybe he's even more valuable because he's higher relative to the rest of his position. So who's providing most production relative to their position, above and beyond what the average starter is bringing? From a just production standpoint, it's Will Anderson, Jalen Carter, Bijan Robinson, JSN, Jack Campbell. So now I'm saying, okay, Bijan's valuable, Andy's valuable relative to other running backs, because that's part of this question too, right? It's like, well, why would you draft Bijan? One, you could grab any old running back in round 3, 4, 5, whatever. So that's my production argument for the running back. Here's where the finances come in. So the average running back, I converted everything to 2025 so we don't deal with like the cap was different in 23. Let's pretend everybody's working with a 2026 salary cap right now. The average running back makes just $7 million a year. And Bijan would be making, if he was drafted at 8 right now, where would he be at? Or like the number 5 running back right now. The number 5 overall pick's making $10 million. So you're already making above the average. And an edge defender's making $13 million. So if you take an edge, you're making 3. So that's where the surplus comes in. Yeah. So that's how the analytics people have just leaned into that number, which is, all right, average edge rushers making 13. Well, you could get a guy for 10. That's a lot cheaper. Average running back's making 7. You got to pay him 10. You're negative $3 million in the hole just against the average. I can extract that even further and make that point stronger for the analytics people. And I said, what about the room as a whole? Because this goes to like, what do you need to fill the running back room? We'll call the edge rusher room, the wide receiver room. Like you need 3 receivers, right? And they average $10 million of salary. Therefore, the receiver room, so to speak, you got to spend $30 million for your top 3 receivers, just say on average. you only have to pay $10 million. So I called running back a 1.5. You need 1.5 starters. You need $10 million to fill your running back room. That's the argument against the running back that high. Is you're paying all of your assets for that room are going to the one player, where you're going to get a super cheap receiver in the top 10, and even if he's a lesser player, you're going to get a super cheap receiver at a position that you have to spend more at just to be competitive. And so that's the whole like quarterback contract. It applies to wide receiver contracts and edge rusher contracts. But again, I think you need to blend both. And honestly say, I mean, I think there were fair arguments on Twitter yesterday. Like, would you rather Jahmyr Gibbs or Zay Flowers?
Right.
Like, these are some fair arguments.
But not to harp on this, did you answer my question of, is the spread in impact, in value, in production, et cetera, wide enough once you strip out quarterback that this stuff actually matters? Or
in production?
Or are the nerds... Did the nerds effectively look at this and say the spread between the value impact that any position that isn't a quarterback has is so negligible that the most powerful thing by far is the surplus value side of it? Like, is that the argument that they're making, albeit in a blunt, bludgeon, douchebaggy way?
Yeah, so I would say...
And I'm not charring all people with that.
Here's how I've looked at it. If you have, like, the difference between the best at a position and, say, the median or average at a position... The delta there, the difference at running back is certainly tighter.
Right.
The difference at edge rusher, like the biggest difference makers on the team, edge, receiver, and defensive tackle, corner, pretty much in there, pretty close. And then offensive line is more like as a whole. Honestly, actually, because guards are so bad sometimes, the delta is pretty strong. We'll talk about guards later.
So my
so
point...
yes, I would say yes, like they're correct, as in the edge rusher is the difference between a good and an average edge rusher is so much wider than where.
Because put into like idiot terms for me, right? My point would be, like if at a scale that I'm relatively familiar with, using a PFF WAR type of number, like a high end quarterback could be worth 3 PFF WAR, right? But a high end non-quarterback might be 0.8, and then the next high end, like a different position, might be 0.6. Like the 0.2. In terms of PFF WAR between these two non-quarterback positions, weighed up against, well, I would be saving, let's say, $12 million of salary cap space, which is another starter at a different position. Like, which is that 0.2 less or more powerful than the other starter I could have over here with the cap saving that I'm having by drafting the different position? Like, that effectively, I think, is the argument, right?
Yes, but this is where I think it depends on the player. And I haven't come to like this definitive... absolute conclusion. Yes, you have to draft Love at 5 if you're the Giants, or 4 if you're the Titans, or 7 if you're...
In a nutshell,
or no, don't ever do it.
In a nutshell, that is the salary argument, right? Is that right? Is the gap between this running back we're talking about and the other position, like that he would be like the amount better he is than the next edge rusher off the board or tackle off the board, is that worth more or less than the cap saving in surplus value that I could then dedicate to a different player at a different position that makes me better in win terms?
So the argument for, say, the Falcons at 8, I forget who,
Dallas Turner versus...
no, he was the year later.
Yeah, he was
say like Peter Skoronski. I mean, they don't need a left guard, but I mean Miles Murphy.
Yeah,
he went 29th. Will McDonald.
Yeah, maybe that was it. I forget who they were talked about that year before they drafted Bijan. Anyway, but it's like that's
they took
the argument.
Bijan at 8.
Yeah.
If you just took Will McDonald at 15, would you rather have Will McDonald? And then the money that you're saving...
Well, Will McDonald and the other player that you can then...
Right, it's Will McDonald plus maybe you get, at the time, Austin Eckler at running back or something.
Right.
And that's the...
Or even just, you know...
And my point is, I don't think it's clear that you want the lesser edge rusher and then the average starter at running back. I don't think that's clear.
But it would be too. I wouldn't be thinking about it in terms of, well, let's spend that money on the average running back. It would be, to me, it's another player as well. It's, would you rather Bijan or Will McDonald a random mid-round running back that costs nothing, effectively, and some guard that you sign in free agency for $12 million a year, right? Like it's those three versus the one guy that you're
I'll run it through
drafting.
the system. I'll have to run through some examples through the system. Because here's the thing. The running backs that are drafted in the top 10, if I had a model for them or something like that, they'd all be, mid to high 90s for me.
Yeah.
And those guys hit. Like those guys
All
you
the
have
time.
there is here's the advantage. I'll go back to the advantage of the running back. They're plug and play.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're above a certain, like the NFL is very good at evaluating running backs. We're all good at evaluating running backs. We're all good at seeing elite when we see it. There has not been an elite running back that's gone. There's not been a running back that's gone in the top 12 in the last 6 or 7 years that's been a bad player. Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson,
The last one that
Jahmyr
hasn't
Gibbs,
been-
Ashton Genty's going to be a
Yeah.
good player once he gets some semblance of run
Right.
blocking.
The last one that hasn't been an unquestioned success is Leonard Fournette.
Leonard Fournette,
And even, that takes you all by the way back to 2017.
2017.
That's a long time. That's almost a decade.
It is. So we as a whole, as a society, we're really good at identifying that guy's a good ball carrier.
Right.
And, oh, by the way, he can catch the ball a little bit too. He's going to be a productive player. And so I think you can justify the pick like I have. Like I could justify that Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs have been two of the most productive players in a vacuum in their draft class and against their position expectations. Because that's the key. It's against your – are they that much better than the baseline at running back? And they are. And then Gibbs in particular is put into this force multiplier situation where he's got a great offensive line, other good playmakers, and he can really shine there. So it's perfectly justifiable, but you have to have a production component. You can't just say, because again, if I said, who's the most, I'm going to look first rounders from the, who's provided the most surplus value for a position group, right? Say that you got to spend $30 million on 3 starters at receiver. The most surplus value just by salary is every receiver drafted lower in the first round. It's Jordan Addison, it's Quentin Johnston, it's Zay Flowers. If you're just FAU, because he went last in the first round, Felix Anudike-Uzomah. He provided the most surplus value. He was the cheapest player in the first round relative to salary expectations at that position. Boom, nailed it. Great surplus value by the Chiefs. So you can't just use that. Lucas Van Ness, Miles Murphy, these are the most valuable players in that, just using salary,
Right.
relative to their position group, because they're the cheapest
Right, because it's
at an
literally not
expensive
factoring in
position.
at all whether they're playing well.
So my point is you have to blend some semblance of unified production that crosses positions and some semblance of salary. And I think my conclusion is, Sam, the elite running back is justifiable if he plays at an elite level. If he plays at a high end level. In our most recent examples, and I'll say Genty will be there. He'll be fine. Our most recent examples, I think you can justify it. The one piece I have to add is the other side is, okay, what if it's Zay Flowers plus starting guard versus one of those running backs?
Do you
right?
have a limit to that, though? Because I think this is one where, not speaking for you as well, but my thinking has definitely evolved on this over the years. I think we got pretty close to the analytics nerds, and we're like, never draft a running back in the first. May have even said that. Go get him in the third round, blah, blah, blah. You get 80% of the production. Then I think along the way, certainly at the Ashton Genty time, we were like, I would take a running back in the first round. Bijan Robinson, we're like, I would take a running back in the first round. Now the conversation becomes, how high up the first round would you take him? And you're weighing, what are you leaving on the table, surplus value, who else is there, et cetera, and the contract thing. And then now I think, again, my big thing is, what is the environment like that you're putting that guy into when you start talking about drafting a running back? Because running back may be the most dependent position in the NFL, where if the 5 guys in front of him stink, doesn't matter how good the running back is. Look at Ashton Genty. The guy got buried behind the offensive line almost every time he touched the football. It didn't matter that he's really, really good. And I think you're right. He will be really, really good if the Raiders fix their offensive line. But unless they do that, it's not a good draft pick. And unlike other positions where you can factor in a 10-year playing career, you might only get the running back for one contract before you're like, I don't want to pay this guy $15 million a year, so we're out, right? And if you burn one of those years because your offensive line is garbage, it's a bad draft pick. So now my question to you is, all right, you can make a case for a running back, maybe more. You can make the case in a numbers-driven way better than anybody because the other people that would be pushing to draft him that high are, Dave Gettleman, who just says he's a 9 on my system.
Yeah.
Or the eye test says he's amazing, so I'm going to draft him. Do you have a limit to how high you would draft the running back?
It depends on the players around him.
Like we're talking about Love at 4. Right?
Yeah.
What if the conversation is Love at 2?
So all I'm saying is I think you can justify the pick in the top 10. If I'm in the draft room, I'm still advising against it because chances are whoever you think are the top 10 players in the draft at non-running back positions, even if their hit rate's going to be lower. Carnell Tate's projected hit rate's lower than Jeremiah Love's.
Right.
But if he hits, he will bring more value to the team, both from a surplus perspective and relative to his position. So I would still, like last year, Armand Membu versus Ashton Genty. I'd rather have Membu because of the scarcity of finding starting tackles, good prospect. That's the smarter move there is Membu. So I don't think it's a matter of how high. It's depending on your confidence level in those other top 10 picks, where's the cutoff? So again, 2023 is a really good example. Gibbs at 12 might be the exact cutoff because look at all the players drafted after him. Do you have any more confidence in Lucas Van Ness and Broderick Jones other than Christian Gonzalez? Like there's no other examples of. There's no player you'd rather have after him. And so,
but
that's looking backwards.
But the financial aspect of it gets more powerful the higher up you get.
It does.
Like the top 10, the guy drafted at 10 is signing a $29, $30 million contract over 4 years. The guy drafted at 1 is signing a $55 million contract over the same period of time, right? So like the higher up in that top 10, you're pushing the running back. The more powerful the surplus value argument becomes.
Let me try to give you. I'll try to give you an example in simple terms. If
Good.
you had
simple terms,
all right. We're going to wrap this up. Here's my conclusion. If we were to use a 0 to 100 system, so instead of the 1 to up to 9 system, just say 0 to 100 system, I would have to run out of players
for grandma.
For grandma, I would have to run out of players in the 90s before I get say Jeremiah Love's a 95. Full confidence he's going to be a high-end elite running back. I would have to run out of non-running back positions in the 90s and maybe run out of players 85 or higher, 80 or higher. If I ran out of those players and then I'm picking at 12 and Love's on the board, then I'm okay with it. But if I'm picking at 4 or 5 and I have other players at tackle, even safety, linebacker, some other positions, then I would have to pass on Love. I would have to pass on the elite running back. Mm-hmm. And so that's where it is. And the 23 example, like Bijan and Gibbs are kind of like at that cutoff probably. And so I think in most drafts, it probably lands at if you could draft an elite running back at 8 to 15, you could stomach it. You could justify it, depending on what's going on around them.
Yeah, I mean, the evolution of my thinking, people have heard already plenty of times this draft season. I think where I am now, which is, I think there's various different elements to this conversation, several of which you've outlined. But to me, the starting point is still yes or no. Is the offensive line, are the dependencies around the running back good enough to support him if we plug him in onto this roster tomorrow, right? And if the answer to that is no, don't draft him.
And then I'm completely with you.
Not even no, by the way. If the answer to that is I can't be sure.
Yeah.
No.
And by the way, I purposely left. That is a perfectly good, astute argument that you continue to make on the running back. I purposely left that out.
Right.
To just say before we even get to that,
that's
got to be
2
considered.
through 5 on the flow chart.
It has to be considered. And if you're the Titans at 4 or you're the Giants at 5, you have to ask that question as well. Like, do I feel good enough about my offensive line going forward? Do I feel good enough about my receiver room? Do I have enough for Cam Ward to throw to? That's why the Lions pick. I wish we should have pulled out the sound clip because I think we both had some. We weren't as critical as others on the Gibbs thing, but we brought running back. It's kind of high. The Lions were in a really nice spot, roster-wise, where Gibbs became the cherry on top of good luck covering all of these players. And I do believe, like if Jeremiah Love could be the force multiplier for a team that's in really good shape, easily you justify that. You've got receivers, you've got a quarterback, you've got all these. You have a good O-line, you have people that are tough to cover. Good luck covering our pass game. Now if the Bengals didn't have such a defensive problem, and you just drop Jeremiah Love on the Bengals, he's a force multiplier for that offense. Those are the best situations for the elite running back. Mm-hmm. All right. I don't know if we came to a conclusion. I did. I came to something there. Let's talk pass rushers here. We had a lot of fun debates historically here. Pass rush upside versus pass rush production. Mm-hmm. Trayvon Walker just got paid. He was one of our guys famously, but he's
moderate paid.
Second tier edge rush salary. I think he's developed. So there were some great debates historically. This is where I take the opposite stance of what I took at quarterback, where I say at quarterback, the advanced data, don't throw it out, but certainly don't lean on it. Don't lean on it. For pass rushers, I think you can lean on it heavily. Advanced data is really strong. You combine it with athleticism, and hit rates for edge rushers should be much higher. If you with all of the data available today, it should be much higher. So some of our fun debates were Aiden Hutchinson versus Trayvon Walker in the 2022 draft, Will Anderson versus Tyree Wilson in the 2023 draft. Will Anderson, of course, goes at 3. Wilson went at 7. Even in 2024, Jared Verse, Laiatu Latu, and Dallas Turner. To a lesser extent, Turner was the first edge rusher off the board. Latu was the first edge rusher off the board, then Turner, then Verse. Verse has been the best to this point. Even go way back to Rashawn Gary, and that's been a conflicting one, right? I think he was productive for a minute and then tapered off. But our big question was, hey, this was an athletic project coming out of Michigan who was a good run defender. Could he figure it out as a pass rusher? He did for a minute. So there's kind of like wins on both sides, but I still think a combination of both the college production plus some semblance of athleticism is the formula for hitting on edge rushers.
Yeah, so this is interesting because, as you said, this should be one of the easier positions to kind of lock in and just say, I'm confused as to why we still get Aiden Hutchinson versus Trayvon Walker conversations, Will Anderson versus Tyree Wilson conversations. Like, those to me are still, by every conceivable way of projecting this out, so clear in the direction of one guy over the other. I don't understand why, not just there's still a conversation, but why sometimes the other side wins. Like, Trayvon Walker went ahead of Aiden Hutchinson. In no world should that ever have happened.
No. It's still, there's like a very small semblance of people. There's enough people out there that think Trayvon Walker's a better player than Aiden Hutchinson. I don't buy that.
I mean, those are the people that believe, those are the people that believe, you see those things where 4% of Americans think they could take a gorilla in hand-to-hand combat.
It's got to be the same.
Those are those people, right? Like, there's a certain percentage of humanity you can just write off to begin with as your brain doesn't function the same way other people's does. You can't take a gorilla in hand-to-hand combat. You're not going to win a fight with a grizzly bear. We can stop having discussions at this point. No good will come from this.
And part of the fun debate here, too, it even goes back to the running back thing. The thing I said in favor of running backs is they're plug and play. So you can, if the idea is you're drafting a player for 4 years, technically 5 if they're a first rounder. If the idea is maximize that 4 to 5 year window, then how a guy plays in year 1 does matter, right? If you draft only developmental prospects and you say, well, wait till year 3, you are throwing away 2 years of potential production, right? And that's the thing with Trayvon Walker, I think, has become a useful player, a good player. I think he's improved against the run. I don't think he's been an elite run defender, but that dude, the strength, the athleticism shows up on the field at least, right? It shows up more in the run game than as a pass rusher, but every now and again, it shows up as a pass rusher. Trayvon Walker has become a pretty productive player. Good, solid player. Mm-hmm. Now, if you know us, anti-sack totals, that's not the definitive, measure of production. I don't think Trayvon Walker was very productive his first couple of years relative to other edge rushers as far as win rate, winning as a pass rusher, even in the run game, losing the edge, missed tackles, the whole thing. So I think you lose out, whereas Aiden Hutchinson, boom, hits the ground running and was outstanding right from the get-go, and you got 4 years of great production, and then he does also get paid at the highest level from an edge rush perspective. So I think that was a clear win for like the productive guy who's also really, really athletic. Will Anderson, I think, was overthought by some people in the industry and in the NFL, in NFL buildings, because Tyree Wilson had 36-inch arms and everything. Like, we need to put measurements, and we need to put everything into proper perspective. Like, just because Tyree Wilson has 36-inch arms and an 84-inch wingspan does not make him a better prospect than Will Anderson, who dominated the SEC and came out as a 21-year-old. This was like clear as day coming out, but you can get skewed by certain things and discussions.
It's like they're targeting, you see those distribution curves, right, which are kind of like bell curves that are to varying degrees of height and width. It's like the NFL is still trying to find the guy whose distribution curve goes furthest to the right, to the elite level. Doesn't matter how much of it is over there. I just want the bit that is furthest towards elite. Like, effectively, they're chasing the highest possible ceiling, regardless of how likely that ceiling is to actually hit. Whereas realistically, what you should be doing is aiming for center mass in the distribution curve and saying, give me the curve that the entire curve is furthest to the right, right? Because I want the most likely thing to happen be as good as possible. And the most likely thing to happen when you're taking exceptionally productive college player who's also a pretty good athlete versus crazy athlete who hasn't been a particularly productive player is the better college player is going to be better most of the time. Maybe the super freak athlete can find a way of putting it all together and become a really good technician and player. And then if he hits that Josh Allen area, then yes, he will be a better player. But what are the chances of that happening?
Yeah, the arguments where they're disingenuous, and so disingenuous arguments is either when you take one outlier, one example, and say, never trust Sam again because he had this one miss or this one awful take, or you take one player and say production's overrated because look at this highly productive bad athlete in college who didn't translate. The point is, do both when it comes to pass rushers. There should be a baseline of production and a baseline of athleticism.
Yeah.
And if you tick both boxes, you're probably going to be okay. When you only tick one,
yes.
And so there's been plenty of players who had great win rates and pass rush grades and
that's the area.
Sack rates, and they were great there, but they weren't great athletes. They were not good at the shuttle, the cone, the 10. And that doesn't mean throw out the production. It just means tick both boxes. Right, because there's been players on the other end like, bet on traits, bet on speed and quicks and get off and bend and bet on this. This guy's never been productive, but bet on it. And that rarely hits too. There's been a few wins there. I'd say Byron Young, maybe a winner recently, the way he's developed for the Rams. But again, he's a third rounder. The Danielle Hunter example was a third rounder.
Right.
Like, you want to take those guys in the third round. I think the closest one in this draft that's going to be fascinating for edge rushers is going to be Malachi Lawrence, who is ascending on draft boards right now out of UCF.
Potential first-round player, apparently.
So there's some Tyree Wilson similarities to me because Tyree was a 5-year player at Texas Tech, and he had one productive season. And it's not exactly like wide receiver breakout age that fantasy guys use, but it does, like, your career matters. And Lawrence had one elite season at UCF. He was an outstanding pass rusher last year. He's got the look, the burst, the bend. It all looks outstanding. I've got some reservations about the whole career arc for him, but he's the guy I think that's going to look like the really athletic projection who put it together for one season at UCF to see end up going in the first round.
Yeah, like the takeaway or the evolution of our thinking and analysis on this one, I think, is understanding that there is an athletic component that probably needs to be met before you're willing to go to bat for some of these guys. So again, early in the PFF college process, we were like, Rashawn Gary versus Chase Winovich. Like, Chase Winovich was arguably a better player for that Michigan defense, certainly more productive than Rashawn Gary, but Rashawn Gary was the athlete. He was the guy that was going to go high. Winovich was not. And we were like, well, maybe you should just take the better football player, right? But the big difference between Winovich and some of these other guys we're talking about is he did not have the athletic profile that some of the others did. Now, his was a bit complicated in that he had a really good change of direction profile, like short shuttle, 3-cone were really good.
Who's that?
Winovich,
yeah.
But his vertical, like the explosive numbers were not necessarily good, right? So his vertical jump was in the 18th percentile. His broad jump was under the 50th percentile. Like, he was not the level of athlete that some of these other guys were. So whereas Aiden Hutchinson had crazy production profile and was a really good athlete, where basically everything across the board was, better than average, significantly better than average in a bunch of different areas. 99th percentile 3-cone, 94th percentile shuttle, vertical, 80th percentile, all this kind of stuff. So I think that's the area of kind of evolution and thinking of, look, you should never take a guy that's exceptionally productive and a very good athlete and pass him over for a guy who's an exceptional athlete but isn't productive. That's crazy to me and still happens. But in order to go to bat for the productive player, that guy needs to be a very good athlete himself.
Yes.
Like you can't just take a guy who's productive but isn't a very good athlete.
And when I use production, use it in the advanced terms. Find the metrics that correlate to NFL. I'm not talking about sack totals, of course. Find the things that project at the NFL level. Get a baseline of athleticism. I think if you had to choose like which part's the force multiplier, I think it's probably the production piece. Like if you're great at that and you're a good enough athlete, I feel good about you projecting. If you're just great as an athlete, I think that's where it gets maybe overrated, or I'd just rather take that guy in the third. If you could take there are, athletes who figure it out in year 2, 3, 4. I'd just rather take that in the third than the first round. I think Malachi Lawrence is going to be really interesting as a one-year production guy who certainly looks the part, and you could watch him against Clemson's TJ Parker or even Keldrick Falk from Auburn, who's a good athlete and a good football player, but has to figure it out from a pass rush perspective, against Denai Dennis Sutton, who worked out well, but was okay from a production standpoint. You could look at Malachi Lawrence and say, that dude looks like an elite pass rusher from the way he moves, but he had one really good season at UCF doing that. He's not as good in the run game. Where do you want to take that? Last year we had the cleaner Shamar Stewart example.
Yeah.
Trayvon Walker like workout, some high-end film, high-end positives on film, but very inconsistent as far as getting after the quarterback. Jury's still out on him after one injury-riddled season with the Bengals.
Yeah, that one was interesting because we didn't have he didn't have the corresponding exceptionally productive college player that people wanted to take him over. So he was last year's version of your Trayvon Walker or your Rashawn Gary or whoever. We didn't have the Aiden Hutchinson because Abdul Carter was the number one edge rusher, and he was also an exceptional athlete. Like we didn't have the counterfactual there to argue against.
While we're here talking about Will Anderson, I'll just touch on where I was wrong. Texans won that trade. I've declared it before on the show, but just reiterating. The Texans won the Will Anderson trade, everyone. They won the trade. I called it the most risky move in the draft. Mm-hmm. They got C.J. Stroud at 2 in 2023. They traded up to get Will Anderson. And the way I would look at it is, I'm not saying definitely do it again every single time. I'm just saying in hindsight now they've won.
Yeah,
they've
they've
right.
obviously gotten the better end of the results. The question would be, is it still good process? Or is it good process?
Is it good process? So I don't have every single trade up on hand here. But I think where I've evolved on that is, again, the analytics people would normally tell us don't have overconfidence in your evaluations.
Right.
I don't completely agree with that because I have confidence in my system. And so there's got to be a baseline of confidence at high value positions. Like if you gave up, I wouldn't make the same trade for Jeremiah Love.
But I also think that is so. When one of the mistakes I think analytics people make is assuming everything scales at all levels to the same degree, whereas I think a lot of these things operate in they operate logarithmically, like they don't. The ends get further away, right?
Yeah.
So when we start talking about the running back thing, what we were saying is, look, when you get to the really elite running backs, the NFL and everybody has been really, really good at identifying the truly elite running backs, right? Which doesn't mean they're really, really good at identifying running backs at all levels. Like you get to the mid rounds and it's still a crapshoot between the guy that becomes good and the guy that's useless, right? Kyle Shanahan keeps drafting these running backs in the middle of the round. You're like, wow, he goes to a Shanahan system. The guy's going to be the next Mike Anderson. And it never happens, right? The guy that he accidentally stumbled upon as an undrafted free agent invariably ends up as the better player. So it's not like we've just solved running back grading. or solve running back projection. We've just got a really high degree of confidence that the guys at the very top of this. And I think that's true for some other positions as well. Maybe the confidence degree when we're talking about blue chip players or like truly elite players is good, which isn't to say that the confidence level of all evaluation should be good.
Yes, so I like that. I buy that, and that's kind of what I'm saying. Like again, let's use a 0 to 100 system as an example. If you were trading up for a 90, a guy that, or whatever your grade scale is, over a 7 or whatever your cutoff is, maybe it ends up being worth it. Now, I still think there's other team building moves that you should make. Like if you're going to trade it was basically 3 premier picks for Will Anderson with a trade swap elsewhere, right? 12. Early second, and then next year's first, roughly, for Will Anderson. Mm-hmm. Still think you have to make other team-building moves and try to draft in volume in other areas, and you are putting all your eggs into one basket. But going back through that specific scenario, the Texans, the only way they could match the value by my numbers of what they got from Will Anderson is like a handful of scenarios. And by the way, one of those scenarios I did put in a Texans mock draft previously, because remember, they were picking at 12, and a lot of us paired C.J. Stroud and JSN in that draft. So one of the scenarios where the Texans, on paper, maybe could have been better is keep the picks, draft JSN at 12, and then draft the Lions guys. Draft like Sam Laporta, where he was drafted by the Lions because they went up and got where I think the Cardinals picked there. So my point is there's like only a handful of specific scenarios where the Texans, with all hindsight, could have, instead of one Will Anderson, could have maybe had JSN, Sam Laporta, and then whoever in the late
also
first.
A bad process.
It's awful process.
Cherry picking who you could have had.
Oh, of course. Yeah. But this is my point. I'm saying there's only like a couple of these things. There's only a couple of those scenarios. Most other scenarios, it's like the Will Anderson move is the win, is absolutely a win. I'm just saying there are very specific cherry pick scenarios where it could go the other way.
Right.
So good on the Texans. Plus, transform the defense, and we saw how good they were last year in the whole deal. It's going to be the longest show ever. How high can you take a nose tackle, Sam?
Hard to say, Steve.
We debated this. I'll start with this. I don't have a clear answer on this, but we debated Jordan Davis a ton in 2000.
Because it's another one that doesn't come along very often, right? Like the general baseline is you don't even take them in the first round, and then every now and again a nose tackle comes along who's 350 pounds and runs a 4.78. You're like, well, okay, now how high can you draft this guy?
So I've got Davis as far as most valuable players in that draft, right in the middle, bottom. Where is he? We're in 2023. Oh, we're in 22. Sorry. The other nose tackles, though, in previous years that we were trying to compare to, Vita Vea, Dexter Lawrence, but we had more faith in those guys as pass rushers than we did with Jordan Davis. Our big debate with Davis was this dude's never played more than, 400-something snaps. Can he do that at the NFL level? And he has. And we knew at the time NFL defenses wanted to play more too high. They wanted to be able to stop the run with fewer players in the box, and that Jordan Davis would be that force multiplier type on the defensive line. Has he been to this point? I think he's been good. He's been a fine player. They've just doubled down, as you said, and paid him.
Yeah.
Ironically, I've got him like dead smack in the middle, right around 13. It went 13th overall, 13th the most valuable player in that first round. Not in the entire draft, but in that first round in 2023.
Is nose tackle a position now where, because one of the things I think that the football people would always sort of say is, look, the things that they do, it's impossible to quantify. It doesn't show up. It's hard to, their ability to two-gap. It lets you play these two high shells. And now in this world of everybody's trying to play in two high shells, defend the run with 3 guys up front, are nose tackles undervalued because they allow you to do other things and it's very hard to quantify what they're actually doing?
I think they've always been. I mean, they were probably overvalued at one point where it's like, well, you can't run a 3-4 without Vince Wilfork.
Well, maybe not overvalued, but like
and Joel Snead. Like people
correctly
knew,
valued. You needed a giant monster in the middle, otherwise the whole system didn't work.
I think they got undervalued for a minute when it was like a pass first league. How you can't have a 2-down player,
right?
Until Nate Tice was talking the other day. Teams are running more than ever, and edge rush defense matters more than ever. Defensive tackle, run defense matters more than ever. If you're the Eagles, we won a Super Bowl with Jordan Davis. We went to 2 Super Bowls with Jordan Davis. Of course, this was justified. And of course, this worked. I think him specifically, it's probably a wash. It's probably it was a fine pick, even at 13, to take him that high. Now you've got Kenneth Grant went last year, also at 13, right, by the Dolphins, and hasn't been as good. But the theory's still sound, right? You've got a 330-pounder who's pretty athletic and can stop the run, and it gives you flexibility on the back end. I do think in Fangio's scheme, Jordan Davis has been good and allows them to do different things, and he's added to his workload a little bit. We were worried about endurance and just hadn't seen him play beyond the heavy rotation that Georgia used. And so I think he's been a fine player. It's
that's
kind of
the one thing he's answered.
Yeah.
Everyone was debating, and this was not just for him, but for a while coming out of that Georgia system where they just had so many players and rotated a lot, and nobody played more than 350 snaps a year. It's like, okay, if you're going to draft a nose tackle this high, can you actually play him enough? This guy specifically, can you play him enough to justify that? Like, question one, forget how well he'll play. Does he have the stamina and the durability to play the amount you're going to need to play him in order to justify that draft pick? That part, at least, he's answered conclusively. Yeah, you can play Jordan Davis enough to warrant it. Now, does he play well enough to warrant it?
I mean, just looking at salary surplus, he's 8th, so fine. Salary surplus relative to the position. I think it's more so if you want to use the market example, as defensive tackle money goes up, it's more justified to take them in the first round because of the surplus aspect.
The chat there brings up a good point, which is at the time, one of the arguments made probably by us, but also by a lot of other people was, Jordan Davis in the top 15 or Travis Jones in the 3rd round. How does that spit out since they've been drafted? Because Travis Jones has been a pretty good player as well. Has it been remotely worth it for the Eagles to invest what they invested in Davis versus just taking the guy lower down?
Oh, so that's a good one. Because we made that point, Travis Jones. PVM per season. Mm-hmm. Travis Jones, 87.5. Jordan Davis, 77.9.
Oh.
It is.
So Jones has been better and cheaper.
It is Travis Jones. And he's provided $8.5 million of production surplus, whereas Jordan Davis is down at $3.6 million. So I've got Travis Jones. That's a good point. Oh, yeah. We nailed that. We were right about that.
Right. So we can debate whether or not you should draft the nose tackle that high in the first place. But if you see another guy that's probably as good, if not better, and is not going to go in the first round because he's not a super athlete, take that guy.
It's also pretty, you don't know that you could definitely get Travis Jones in the 3rd.
But we did feel pretty good about that at the time.
Yeah.
Like Travis Jones was as good of a player as Jordan Davis. It's just the mythical, theoretical upside of what Davis could be as a guy that runs a 4.78 at 350 pounds.
Good question. That was good. I love that we had an answer there. They have been the top 2 most productive defensive tackles in that class, though. Travis Jones, Jordan Davis, then Devontae Wyatt, number 3, mostly because of injuries, though.
Because that was kind of the question with Davis and why he was being propelled that high. It was the combine. It was, oh, my God, the planet theory thing. Like, look, how many of these guys are, like, what could he be? It's like, yeah, but if he doesn't actually get any better, if he's just the guy he is, then none of that means anything.
I like that. So it was a fun discussion. We spent a lot of time on that. I think they won a Super Bowl win. I certainly wasn't a bust of a pick.
Yeah.
He's been a good player.
And they've doubled down on it.
And they have doubled down on it. We'll see what happens with Jalen Carter.
And then you get the one in Dexter Lawrence, which is like he's been the unicorn because he's been the nose tackle who does all the regular nose tackle stuff, and then also is a monster as a pass rusher in a way no other nose tackle in the NFL is and maybe has ever been.
When healthy.
Sure, yeah. He's declined a little bit in production with the elbow injury. But the point is, at his peak, he might be one of one in NFL history in terms of that. So him, you can take as high as you want. Draft him number 2 overall if you want.
Let's go back to one more discussion that we had. We'll do this one quickly. We debated age and upside for 2 linebackers, Leighton Vander Esch and Tremaine Edmonds, years ago. Edmonds was super young, but also experienced.
Yes.
And Leighton Vander Esch was old and inexperienced. And I don't know if this one was definitive either, other than Vander Esch became a better player and then had to retire early due to injury.
Yeah, so I think it would have been definitive, except Vander Esch injured his way out of the NFL. I think he was clearly the better player when they were both healthy and early in their careers and developing. And then Van Der Esch just got hurt and was never the same guy again, and B, was out of the NFL pretty quickly. So, like overall, Edmonds will end up with the better career because he's lasted longer and been healthy. But that wasn't the conversation at the time. Nobody was we weren't concerned with what happens if Van Der Esch's neck becomes an issue. It was like, who's going to be the better football player? And I think Van Der Esch was the better player.
So while we're talking about this, Renner just put out a tweet. Let me go through this. And
the
so,
20-year-olds.
Yeah. So do you have that handy?
Yep.
Okay.
Players that will be 20 years old on draft day. Jeremiah Love, running back from Notre Dame. Miami's tackle, Francis Maui-Noah. Alabama's tackle, Caden Proctor. Auburn center, Connor Liu. Ohio State linebacker / edge rusher Arvell Reese, Tennessee cornerback Jamon McCoy, and then South Carolina cornerback Brandon Cisse.
I think with age, I think it depends on position. And when we're evaluating the NFL draft, like anything else, we cannot just say, well, age matters in football. Again, the fantasy people have done a lot of work on breakout age and how much that matters, but only at the skill position players. And wide receiver in particular as a big one. I don't know that applies at offensive tackle or pass rushers or corners or whatever it may be. I don't think it applies like for like across every position.
By the way, the other point he was making is that Keldrick Falk, the age on him that's been out there is wrong. Like, he's 21 already. Now, he's still 4 years younger than Mesner.
He's 20 now.
No.
It's 20.
He's told himself, apparently he said at the combine that he's 21 already.
Oh, okay.
The birthday that's been out on him so
get
far
him out
has
of
been
here.
wrong. So he's a year older potentially than people thought he was. Not a year, but he's 21 already.
Well, that changes everything.
Everything.
So yeah, I think again it comes down to drafting young sounds great, but if it's going to take a guy a couple of years to develop and you only have him for 4 years, are you losing some of the advantage of having the older player? I think those are fair questions. I think it's different positionally. I don't have all the answers in front of me as far as whether or not age matters at each position. But I think offensive linemen, we know that they take longer to progress. So I think if you're taking a 20-year-old, you might be risking a couple of those early years. But maybe you get the cheaper second contract, and that's fine. Then you have the extreme examples the other way, like Byron Young, we keep bringing up, edge rusher for the Rams, who was 25 and broke out as a 28-year-old. I mean, that doesn't make sense on paper, right? But that's what he did.
Right.
He was a great athlete who had his best season as a 28-year-old just last year.
Yeah. I mean, there's always going to be outliers for anything. I think the thing would be, I mean, you want to be targeting young players generally because I think across the board there's power to that idea that, there's some signal that if a guy, it's a talent proxy, right? If a guy is really good really early, he's probably very talented. So you should generally start to steer into those guys.
Yeah.
Then the question becomes, for the guys that are older, what is the reason that didn't happen? Are there reasons that didn't happen? How explainable is it that the guy did not show the talent proxy early in his career? And, how acceptable would it be to then ignore that and say, well, those reasons are plausible? Problem with that is, when you start sort of looking for reasons to explain things away, you can do that with most people if you want to, right? And then you end up looking too hard to try and talk yourself into prospects that probably just aren't as talented as others.
Still TBD on the age thing. All right, right now, FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. That's right, turn $5 into $250 in bonus bets just for getting started. And when every possession matters in the playoffs, FanDuel makes it easier to get closer to the action, from player props to your favorite stars, or on your favorite stars, to all the tools you need to back them up. FanDuel puts player research right at your fingertips so you can check stats, trends, and matchups all in one place and make your picks with confidence. It's everything you need all in one app, so don't miss your shot. Head to FanDuel.com/33rd to get started. FanDuel, play your game. 21 plus in select states. For Kansas in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, 18 plus in D.C., Kentucky, or Wyoming. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 1-800-MY-RESET. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org. Call 800-327-5050 in Massachusetts. Call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY. Text HOPE-NY in New York or call 877-770-7867. Today we're talking FanDuel odds to go number 3 in the draft here, Sam.
Okay.
Number 3 overall. The favorite's David Bailey at plus 210. Then we get to Francis Maui-Noah plus 350, Arvell Reese plus 390, Ruben Bain plus 950, Sonny Styles plus 950, and then Jeremiah Love plus 1,000. Of course, the Arizona Cardinals hold the number 3 overall pick. We've seen Maui-Noah there a lot in our mocks and others. What are your thoughts on number 3 overall in the odds so far?
Yeah, to me, it really just becomes which way the Jets are going at 2. I think whichever of the edge rushers between Arvell Reese and David Bailey does not get selected by the Jets, I think they're definitely in play for Arizona. And then it's between the remaining of those guys and Maui-Noah.
David Bailey being the top. They can go either way here. There was the unsubstantiated rumor that Dallas was trying to trade up from 12. Unsubstantiated.
Yeah.
I would be interested to see if Arizona would be willing to trade out there. I think Bailey could be the guy.
Yeah. The offensive line thing's interesting because you've got, on the one hand, offensive linemen tend to get pushed higher every year than people expect them to. On the other hand, I think the general consensus on this class appears to be that none of these guys are top-tier caliber tackles. And, in fact, none of them might be tackles. Like we said this last year, it's amazing that every one of these top tackles being talked about as a guard. Not quite the same this year, but a lot of them are. I mean, Maui-Noah was the consensus tackle one for a long time, and a lot of people are saying this guy's a guard. If the league sees him as a guard, then he's not in the conversation at 3.
We're going to talk about it. Good tackle versus elite guard.
Yeah.
It's one of our myths coming up.
There are people out there that love Spencer Fano and think he's the best tackle in the NFL. On the other hand, he's below the threshold. He doesn't have 33-inch arms. So there are going to be people that say, well, he's not a tackle either. So my point being, if you're Arizona and you're looking for a plug-and-play right tackle, you might not see one.
I would say Bain is the value there, too, at plus 950. I wonder how many teams are going to say, I don't see the arm length issue on film whatsoever.
Yeah.
This dude's a mauler. Just get him. And plus 950 at pick number 3 seems like value there. FanDuel.com/check the mic. Go check it out. All right, Sam, going back to quarterbacks really quickly here. Mm-hmm. Can QBs improve accuracy in the NFL?
Yes.
Moving on.
Josh Allen did it, therefore it's possible.
Lamar Jackson did it as well.
Yeah. What was his accuracy like in college? I mean, we're talking like throw location as opposed to completion percentage.
I pulled out this tweet from before, just using adjusted completion percentage in the NFL. So this was 18 to 19. Lamar, this was like late in the 2019 season where I tweeted this out at AWS Cloud, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Powered by.
Over 10% increase in adjusted completion percentage, which adjusted for drops. And Allen was in the mix. Both that year, they had both made 2 of the biggest jumps of the previous 6 or 7 years, actually 15 years. And so Lamar did it in the NFL from 18 to 19 and then stayed at relatively that level. Right? And so did Allen, accuracy-wise, once they made that jump. So Lamar's like the ball location numbers, and we have those as well. The ball location numbers on him and Allen were poor in college.
Right. Yeah. The actual ball location stuff as opposed to completion percentage.
So they did it, and so then we started debating this in 2023.
Remember there was a whole thing about Lamar Jackson. He'd been like practicing with the wrong footballs or something. He'd been throwing a college ball.
Yeah.
And then got to an NFL ball. I was like, what the hell is this thing? I can't put this within a zip code of a guy.
I've told this story before, too, but the current, I think he's the UNH head coach again, Ricky Santos, was Chip Kelly's quarterback in college. He was my workout partner. And he had this fresh NFL ball that he was practicing with before the combine. And we would go cold in Massachusetts where we worked out. We'd go to the tennis courts across the street to throw. So it was Ricky Santos, David Ball, who broke all of Jerry Rice's records at UNH. So they would go like run routes together and everything. And I was like, hey, can I throw one? He's got this beautiful, fresh pigskin. Beautiful. And he's kind of like hesitant, like, don't scuff it up or anything. And I'm in baseball mode. I haven't thrown a football in months, ever, years maybe. So I'm like, no, I'm good. I got it. And I just chuck it. I miss by like 10 feet, scuffs against the tennis court, ruin his beautiful NFL ball he knew though. He was training with the big NFL ball. He was getting used to the different size and inflation and the whole thing. But I ruined his ball. But we brought this up. Let's bring we'll throw to this one. We brought up the accuracy discussion regarding Anthony Richardson in 2023. Which I think we have. We're putting up here on YouTube. I pulled out some quote-unquote, let's call them project type of quarterbacks through the years, right? These are the guys where it's like they have to improve their accuracy. They've got things to improve upon. And so just using our accuracy percentages, Justin Herbert's at 58%. He was a guy that had to work at it. I put Trubisky in there because we know he got into the NFL and became inaccurate. He was pretty inaccurate. He was at 58%. Josh Allen was at 53%. This is using actual ball location. You put it where it needs to go. Lamar Jackson, 52%. Trey Lance, 47%. And then Anthony Richardson is last among this group that I cherry-picked because I think they're similar. I mean, Anthony Richardson's last no matter which guys you pick, but I picked these guys because we thought, hey, there are some accuracy concerns coming out, or in Trubisky's case, accuracy concerns in the NFL at the NFL level. And Richardson's at 46% accuracy rate, and he's less experienced than all of them except Trey Lance. So there are hurdles to overcome for Anthony Richardson. So yeah, I was trying to use that data point at the time to say we thought Lamar was inaccurate. Again, ball location-wise, I know his completion percentage was good. Allen was inaccurate, and they figured it out. But Richardson and Lance were at a special level of low using those numbers at the time, and neither one obviously has come out of it. It's not the only issue, but that's still been the biggest issue for Anthony Richardson. I think he's not an awful decision maker. He might be a little off from a timing perspective, but he just misses too many throws, and he continues to miss too many throws. But that was why did the Anthony Richardson thing happen in 2023? Because Allen and Lamar just happened.
Yeah.
Allen in particular just happened because you can lean into running quarterbacks more now and build a run game around them.
He's the overcorrection.
Yeah, there were a lot of reasons why. And dude, I told you I'm a Florida fan, man. Like I watched this guy at Florida, and when I first heard that Anthony Richardson was going to go top 5, I was like, no way. Like he hasn't played well yet in the college level. But this is why you could hit all these justifications. We just saw Allen improve. We just saw the run game impact that Lamar and others make. Let's take a bet on this guy here.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously if you were just looking at that, as you said, cherry-picked sample size, what you would say is, if you are a special level of bad, that's a massive red flag right now because the two names on that list are Trey Lance and Anthony Richardson. If you're just moderately bad, actually, 3 of those 4 guys came out of it, right? And the other guy, I don't think failed because of accuracy. The other guy failed because of other stuff. So the broad strokes analysis of that would be there. I think what the terrible number says, it's similar to that. People have made this point recently, which is I think there's something to this idea of if you miss bad a lot, there's a problem there. Like, not necessarily just missing. Everyone misses. We're all going to and some guys miss bad. Everyone misses bad. Like, Mahomes has got throws on tape where he's 5 yards away from a guy. Like, what the hell happened there, right? Everyone has those throws. I'm sure if you comb Brady's and Manning's tape, you can find a throw that doesn't have miscommunication involved where they just missed the guy by 5 yards. I'm sure everybody has those on tape. Again, the question is how often do they happen? And I think with guys where they happen quite a lot, it feels like that and the number in the 40s is sort of pushing at the same thing, which is there's like a fundamental breakdown somewhere in your mechanics, the umbrella term. There's just something wrong with how you're throwing the ball that needs to be fixed, and it may need to be fixed in such a complete rewiring of the system that it's just never going to happen. We're never going to get to that. Like Josh Allen, there's sort of various videos and stuff out there of like that guy completely reworked his throwing mechanics over the first couple of years, right? And he throws the ball now differently to the way he threw the ball when he came into the NFL. I don't know how many quarterbacks are doing that when they get to the NFL. Like, you're certainly not doing it in season. I mean, Kyle Shanahan has talked about he's not touching a quarterback's mechanics during the year. We got other things to deal with. We got game plans to work on. I'm not, hey, more weight on your front foot. Like, that's not happening, right? So this is almost becoming something that a quarterback has to do himself on the side and probably in the offseason. So I just don't know how much that's ever happening for these guys. So if you find a guy that's got genuinely problematic or troublesome accuracy issues, I think that's still a big red flag, which isn't to say you can't fix it. It's just it's not easy, and it may have to happen on your own dime.
That's where I wonder how much the personal training aspect of things is. That's the thing you have to know about. Baseball, the baseball analytics development since Moneyball came out. When Moneyball first came out, it's like, oh, on-base percentage is undervalued. Let's focus on that. But now it's evolved to teams are changing pitch repertoires, and they have the infrastructure to tell you, hey, Sam, you're a fastball, curveball guy. You're fast curve change. We think you'd be better as sinker, slider, split, and sweeper, and we'll still throw a curve, but we're only going to throw 10% of the time. And then against lefties, you're going to throw Fosh change. Like that's the type. What does that mean to you?
Nothing.
It used to be like, oh, you throw these 3 pitches. Have you tried this grip a little bit? Maybe throw this pitch a little bit more against righties. Like that's what the analysis used to be. Now it's like I'm going to give you a 6-pitch mix and tell you how to throw it against righties and against lefties. It is individual development that I don't think has hit the NFL yet, and I don't know exactly which form it'll come in. That's just in how you play the game, which is different from the mechanics piece of it and the fact that Josh Allen's working with Jordan Palmer. And look, it doesn't mean Jordan Palmer fixes everybody. He's had other guys that haven't been fixed.
That's the thing. It's one thing to say, does this guy have the makeup to go and find a personal quarterback coach, hopefully find the right personal quarterback coach, and then spend the time and effort and money that it's going to take to actually do that over a couple of year period, right? Does he have that makeup is question one. But then number two is like, can this guy even be fixed in those terms? Like, I'm sure there's a bunch of people who they're just biomechanically in this rut they've skewed in this direction that's not good for them overall. And you're not rewiring that. Like, no amount of working on Tim Tebow's throwing motion would have turned him into like Dan Marino, right? You were never going to we're going to tighten this long looping thing up and a couple of years' time, it's going to be like snapshot only at the elbow. It's going to look like Dan Marino. We got it covered. Don't worry about it. Like Tim Tebow could have spent the next 15 years of his life working on doing that, and you never would have got to where Dan Marino was.
Tim Tebow, there were college game day specials his junior year of college talking about how he was revamping his mechanics.
Right.
This was honestly like an annual article or think piece about Tebow fixing his mechanics.
And I'm sure it wasn't through lack of dedication and working at it that Tim Tebow's mechanics remained garbage for his entire NFL career. It's just like that's just how the man throws the football, and there's probably no fixing that, or at least no fixing it to the fundamental degree that it needed to change for him to become a viable NFL quarterback, right? That's, I think, the other issue here is like, how much of this is even fixable, even if the guy's going to spend the next 2 years working on it? And by the way, how many quarterbacks even get 2 years to do that? Like, Josh Allen got quite a lot of runway before he was able to be a good NFL player. Again, we had faith. He had the it factor, the moxie right away, blah, blah, blah. But you're seeing quarterbacks now that get half a season, and then that's it. Thanks. Your audition's done now. It's time to take a seat in the bench. Like, Richardson's already done. He hasn't had the amount of time that Josh Allen had before he turned good.
I think the conclusion to this entire show is Josh Allen is an outlier in basically every sense.
Right.
Because he developed, but also even just him, the NFL player, is an outlier. We haven't seen many players with that level of arm talent, running ability, some volatility with turnover. I mean, there's so much to Josh Allen, just watching him week to week, that is unique.
I mean, my overall takeaway from this would be, yes, quarterbacks can improve their accuracy in the NFL, but if accuracy is a red flag for the quarterback prospect that you're talking about, it's still something to be very scared of. And if you're taking a guy, let's say you've identified it as a specific mechanical problem with their delivery, well, then you better have a serious plan to turn that guy into something different, and also the patience to make that happen, right? Because I think you could throw some accuracy concerns in there with J.J. McCarthy as a prospect and with Ty Simpson this year as a prospect, right? So again, if you're planning on drafting Ty Simpson, let's say you love him as a prospect, you love his moxie, you love what the throws that he can make, you love the full field progressions, all that kind of thing. You're the Jets. You're like, Ty Simpson's our guy. We're not going to use those picks next year in a quarterback. He's the guy. Maybe it's a 33, but he's our dude. All right, but now you better have, how are we getting the misses out of him, right? How are we getting the plays where he airmails at 6 yards over Jeremy Bernard over the middle of the field out of his game? Because I think that needs some serious work, and just hoping that he's going to sort it out himself doesn't feel like a good system.
Yeah, I said this a couple years ago, and I don't know how much progress is made. I'm very interested to see what type of individual development teams are able to do, individual player development, or if you're just dependent on Duke and OL masterminds and Von Miller's pass rush academy. Like, are you just dependent on the offseason piece, or do front offices evolve the same way baseball has, where they have, because you hear teams, player development, we believe in our player development. How can you get more granular and specific at that? And accuracy would be one of those.
That's what seems to be interesting to me about this thing, is the teams don't appear to have embraced the idea of doing it in-house. It's like, we'll let them go.
No, they don't have a lot of time. No,
but a lot of the amount of time, but you do have off seasons, right? Like, they're not.
You do.
It seems to be farmed out to the personal quarterback coach, or the personal, like, they're going to, camps for positions. They're not doing it in-house. Like, you're not bringing in, like, a team should be contracting out let's bring in a Jordan Palmer in-house as our quarterback coach, and he can spend the offseason working on these guys. Like, they never need to leave, right? They're going to be here the entire offseason outside of the vacation time, and we're going to overhaul his mechanics in the building.
And that's what baseball did. Driveline is the place where everybody went to go improve their velocity, and then teams just started hiring people from Driveline. All right, you're in-house now. The difference with baseball and football, though, is baseball is a completely individual sport.
Sure.
You got to work as a team. Not really. I'm on an island pitching. You're on an island hitting. You don't have to worry about plays and playbook. You're not spending the offseason learning plays. That's the difference in football. You have to learn a system, timing with receivers. So much practice time in the offseason as well has to go to that, which is different from just individual mechanics.
Yeah, also actually the thing that maybe the reason it hasn't gone in-house, now that I think about it, is falling foul of the CBA. Like, you can't necessarily hammer players for a huge degree of the season, so maybe that's the reason.
Well, this is the irony of the way the Players Association has had to negotiate less practice time, and maybe to the detriment of the product and their own development, because I know why they did it. They wanted fewer, shots to the head during practice, but
the unintended consequence.
Yes, that's where we are. All right, here's a great two debates that we had here, Sam. Jamar Chase versus Penei Sewell. On the spot here, I don't know if can you find the old tweet, the old like Joe Burrow trying to throw the ball on his back, the graphic. Jamar Chase versus Penei Sewell, and then similarly a couple years ago, Joe Alt versus Malik Neighbors. What's the definitive answer to this?
To me, the great thing about this one is the definitive answer has never changed, which is no matter what you do, you're fine.
Your take at the time, we sat there for hours debating Jamar Chase and Penei Sewell for the Bengals at pick 5 in 2021. Joe Burrow was coming off his first season. He'd been injured. The O-line had been an issue in Cincinnati for a while. The graphic was going around, Joe Burrow can't complete a pass when he's on his back, blah, blah, blah. Joe, even if the receiver's open. But they draft Jamar Chase and go to the Super Bowl that particular season. But I think Jamar Chase and Penei Sewell have both become elite players at their positions. And your take was you can't go wrong. And I think that still holds true here 5 years later.
The point is, it's only half of the decision-making tree. Like, you need, at that point, you need both those positions, right? You need a receiving upgrade. You need an upgrade on the offensive line as well. That's why we're having the debate in the first place. And adding an elite player at either is fine. It's not like you're taking away from one to do the other necessarily. The point is you still need to go and address the other as well. Otherwise, the graphic is correct in that you're not fixing it unless you upgrade it both. One upgrade is not solving it.
Yeah. And that debate, too, was, okay, we still know that if you draft Sewell, you still need a receiver. If you draft a receiver, you still need an offensive lineman. On the turn, they went Cordell Volson, who did not develop into a good offensive lineman. Had they gotten Sewell, I forget who the receivers were that were available later, but like that was the debate. The one was more clear for the Chargers with the Joe Alt versus Malik Neighbors discussion because they got Joe Alt plus Ladd McConkey, and I feel like they made the right call.
They literally achieved the. They actually did it.
In that particular draft.
They came back in the second round and got the guy.
My PVM numbers have a slight edge to Jamar Chase over Penei Sewell. Again, that's in a. So here's. You ready for some really interesting numbers?
Sure.
PVM, the numbers don't matter, but it's 213 to 195. Jamar Chase to Penei Sewell. But when you adjust it for how much they're bringing above the median starter at their positions, 151 for Chase to 150.4 to Penei Sewell. So in other words, production relative to their position group, it's almost dead smack even between Jamar Chase and Penei Sewell. You were right. A literal wash.
Yeah. Doesn't matter.
A literal wash. This graphic is so wrong, by the way.
In what way?
It's assuming, so it's Joe Burrow's back to throw. If Sewell's blocking, he's got a clean pocket, so he could throw to anybody who's open. But option B, we have just anybody off the street blocking. Joe Burrow's getting tackled, and Jamar Chase is sitting there wide open. It's wrong because anybody who's wide open in option A isn't open like Jamar Chase is. Sure. That's the missing piece here. It's just assuming that anybody can get open.
I mean, there's several missing pieces. It's also like
obviously
Sewell's only one offensive lineman. If the other four suck, it doesn't matter. So the Bengals they also did the counterfactual. The problem is they missed with their guy. They got Jackson Carman in the second.
Oh, I picked the wrong guy. I said Volson. Yeah, it was Jackson Carman. I apologize.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the same thing is true. Like that's the problem is not did you take the right guy at the top. The problem is what do you then do about the other position?
Yeah.
Whether it's the second round or not, which is usually the way we game this out. It's well, look who you can have in the second round. It's whether or not you do it that way or whether or not you address it in free agency or whatever. The point is, however they addressed it didn't work, and that was the issue there.
On the other side, so we.
By the way, though, even if you were doing it in reverse and you say they took Penei Sewell,
who were the receivers available?
Yeah, the wide receivers available at that spot. The next guy is off the board. The next guy off the board was the late Rondale Moore, then Dwayne Eskridge, then Terrace Marshall Jr., then Josh Palmer, De'Ami Brown, Amari Rutt. Like, you're not finding a wide receiver lower down. Nico Collins is the next guy that was actually like would have solved the problem.
If you knew,
right, if you
knew what Nico Collins was going to become, take Penei Sewell.
If you were able to cherry pick Nico Collins out of the dross that was available in the second and third round at wide receiver, yes, it would have made sense.
I think realistically we would have said Terrace Marshall would have been the option there.
Yeah, maybe. The point is, I mean, that list that I gave you, right? Like it's 5 or 6 guys, and the only one that would have done you any good is Nico Collins, right? And then
that anybody would not have been wide open.
And then lower down the 4th round, you get a Monson and Brown. Yeah, so you could find a guy, but it wasn't easy that year.
And then in 2024, Chargers had a very similar decision, and I made this point on the show the other day, how different the drafts are where we're not debating these potentially elite players at number 5. Joe Alt goes number 5 to the Chargers. Malik Neighbors goes 6 to the Giants. We debated for the Chargers at 5. Very similarly, do you take the elite tackle in Alt or the elite receiver in Neighbors? The difference in this one is we knew that we felt like this wide receiver class was really strong back end of the first and into the second. I think the Chargers hit a home run with Ladd McConkey. I know he took a step back last year, but that's a home run pick, especially in that range where those other receivers went. And Alt, I thought, was the right pick for the Chargers. Production-wise, Neighbors beats him out right now by my numbers, but both players have been injured. It's still up in the air as to who the better player is between Neighbors and Alt, but I think they're both going to be, again, elite at their position.
Next tackle off the board that year was Patrick Paul, which would have been interesting.
So they could have gone Neighbors and Paul. And that would have been decent.
So the tackle run, there was a bit of a gap, actually. So Patrick Paul went at 55, so there was a 20-odd pick swing after the run, after the Chargers had their second pick before tackle went. Patrick Paul, Blake Fisher was the next one, Roger Rosengarten, Kingsley Suamataia, who was a tackle at that point before the Chiefs kicked him into guard, then Brandon Coleman, Caden Wallace. So it runs foul pretty quickly, but Patrick Paul as the next tackle off the list would have made it a pretty interesting counterfactual.
So those were fun debates. I mean, we spent a lot of time talking about both of those, didn't we?
Yeah.
All right, let's go.
That's the one rare one, though, where we've talked about how our thinking has evolved in all this. My thinking has remained the same, which is
The conclusion
doesn't
is
matter. They're both elite players. You can't mess it up by picking one of them. You can only mess it up by not picking somebody else later on.
And I think I ended up landing on. I probably if I had to make the pick for the Bengals, I would have gone Chase over Sewell, and if I had to make the pick for the Chargers, I think I landed on Alt.
To me,
Neighbors.
the only thing that would change my thinking on these is if you get to a draft where you've got superstar player at either position, but in the second round, it's like it runs out immediately, right? It's like this is a one-player.
Yeah, you got to
draft.
play what happens on the turn.
Like this is a one-player draft at one of these positions, and if the second we get past that first guy, there's just nothing available. If you show me that, well then go for the position where there's options in the second round. But if it's broadly similar in terms of the depth of the positions, then just whatever. Pick the guy that you like better. Doesn't matter.
All right, draft myth / discussion / data example. Injury risk players. I tried to crowdsource a list of injury-riddled players coming out of college, going into the NFL, and how they turned out. This applies in this draft class to Jordan Tyson, Arizona State wide receiver. So I put together a pretty extensive list. Once again, conclusion-wise, I don't know. Come to your own conclusion on this, because some players, it was a serious issue. Other players, it wasn't.
But is this injury-riddled or guys coming off serious injury?
It's a combination of both. So, like, the best player that I have on this list is Jeffrey Simmons, who was merely coming off of a big injury.
Because it
was
feels
not
like
an
those
injury
are different
concern.
things to me. Like, I think when a guy starts to have an injury profile, that feels like a concern. If a guy is just coming off an injury, I feel like that should just be a discount somewhere.
I put Simmons on the list, but he's the worst example for this.
Because even at the time, people were like, he's going to be really good.
Yeah.
How much does the discount take him down the first round?
He was a top 10 caliber player who the Titans got at 19, and then ironically tried similar things with guys like Caleb Farley, and it didn't work. Caleb Farley's probably the worst example.
So that's the thing. They've done it twice
with
either one of those things. They had a guy who was just injured, and then they had a guy who was an injury-riddled mess, and they worked out differently.
So, again, this is one of those things you can't just say, well, Caleb Farley he had awful injury history, and you never take that player. Jackson Smith-Njigba had hamstring issues, and he had injury issues at Ohio State.
There's a one for your Jordan Tyson fans.
Right? So he's panned out, obviously. I'll just read off some names so we go through it. Jalen Phillips. Remember, he had previously retired.
Yep.
Concussion issues. He's averaged 564 snaps per season, but as we've cited a lot during free agency time, 2 years over 800, 3 years under 800. So he's been a little in and out of the lineup now. New Carolina Panther. Laiatu Latu, concussion issues, similar history across Washington and UCLA. He's been pretty durable through 2 years so far. Jonathan Allen, when he came out, was said to have a chronic shoulder injury in 2017. He's still playing in the NFL, averaged almost 700 snaps per season, and he's been a very good player. Rashee Rice was, I think, just coming off an injury, where he played banged up in his year in 2022. I had an injury tag on my old
I think he'd had
data.
an injury that year.
Trey Smith, Chiefs guard, had a heart issue that popped up?
Yeah. Which the Chiefs doctor has obviously cleared him up.
And he's been fine. I mean, as durable as any guard in the NFL since entering the league. Dalton Kincaid had injury issues in college, and now it's interesting because Buffalo's already talking about how they have to limit him going forward. Like, even they're talking about it in the offseason, how he's going to be limited or on a pitch count. He's averaged 550 snaps per season. I think that's one that's touch and go. I thought he really took a step forward last year as a player, but in and out of the lineup, and it might be an issue going forward. Lyle Collins, remember we had some inside information that some teams said he's got degenerative hip condition. He's off our board, and he had the other off-field incident that dropped him from the first round to an undrafted free agent, but he didn't have any durability issues at the NFL level.
That was a complicated mess at the time.
It was. Will Johnson last year.
Yeah.
He played a full season, though, so far, but he was coming off an injury and not working out. So you see, like, those are the best players that have come out. On the other end of things, Chavone Revel last year had an injury concern. He looked pretty bad last year as a rookie. Cam Smith, the second-round corner from the Dolphins, had injury issues coming out. He's played like 150 total snaps in the NFL. Caleb Farley, I think, is the most extreme example.
Yeah.
like chronic back issues, and we had people telling us like this is one of the worst.
He then did his knee like immediately.
Yeah.
And then he's been, I mean, that just set him off on a bad course.
David Ajabo,
Yeah.
multiple ACLs, right?
Coming out? An ACL or an Achilles? He did it at his pro day, right?
Yeah. So
think
he
it was
was
a-
like,
I think
all
it was
right,
an
there's a, but he went in the second. We
Yeah.
we were like, all right, there's a good buy low for a guy that could have gone in the first round as a pass rusher.
Right.
But he's only averaged 148 snaps per season as well to
Right.
this point. The other extreme ones, Miles Jack, what did he have?
I don't remember Miles Jack being injured.
I just kind of trust. Jalen Smith was the big one, though.
Yes.
And then, he could have been a top 10 pick at linebacker, ends up going in the second round. And his was kind of hit or miss. Like when he was in the NFL, I think it affected his play.
Well, there was complications or something coming off it because he ended up with drop foot or whatever.
Right.
Like his was a lasting problem off the back of that injury. Remember, he had like the devastating injury at the end it was in the bowl game, right?
Yes.
Plays the bowl game, has a devastating knee injury, and then I think that had permanent consequences in terms of he never fully recovered. He had drop foot on that leg, etc.
Yeah, so he was drafted 2016. I mean, he looked like coming out of Notre Dame, he would be one of the best linebacker prospects to come out. He gets drafted in the second round by Dallas, misses all of 2016 because of that injury. But once he gets out on the field, his first 3 years, he looks pretty good. He just never and he played over 1,000 snaps a couple times, but he was years where he was in and out of the lineup, and just I think it affected his play more than as much as his durability.
Right.
He was just never the same player. So that ended up being like, I don't know, like a decent buy low for the Cowboys to see.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you'd call that a win for them necessarily. They got a couple good years out of him, though.
Right.
Josh Simmons last year with the leg injury.
Yep.
Still TBD. He missed some time last year, unrelated injury, and plus off field, and
But
don't
looked
really.
good.
But looked good when he was out there. Yeah. N'Kobe Dean. What was he coming off of? Did he get hurt his last
It's
year?
interesting, though. The Cowboys have a history that I hadn't really thought about of drafting these guys that are coming off injuries. And yet the report yesterday was that they're not going to be drafting Jermod McCoy because he's coming off an injury. I'm like, well, they literally did that a year ago to a corner in Revel. They've done it previously.
Yeah, but their doctor did the surgery.
I guess. They've done it previously. Yeah, maybe his doctor, the cowboy hat, didn't do McCoy's knee, so he's out. But like as much as anybody, they've drafted these guys with injuries, and McCoy's the guy they're out on because of that injury. That doesn't make sense to me. Anyway,
Somebody's saying we did not mention Lamar Jackson during the 2018 draft discussion.
we mentioned him multiple times.
Many times.
Well, I know, maybe not the one. Well, up top we mentioned
At
him.
the
We definitely
beginning.
mentioned him, but we gave more in the second one. We talked about him. I mean,
did.
very briefly, but his name
We more
definitely got-
talked about Baker Mayfield
Yeah.
and Josh Allen because we had extreme views on them. We
Right.
didn't have an extreme view on what Lamar could be at the next level, so we weren't like rehashing
His
that.
name definitely came up, though.
And it certainly did. Anyway, do you have any conclusions off of this? Like, a lot of good players have come out that had injury issues. Jalen Phillips, I think, is one of the more interesting ones because he's been in and out of the lineup, and when he's in there, he's a good player. And then it comes down to like your risk appetite. If our player is more likely to miss 300 snaps a season, but when they're out there, they're worth it. You know,
I mean, to
Andrew
me,
Voorhees, I did have on my list as well. Thanks for bringing that up in the chat.
love that guy. To me, I would draw a distinction between, look, is a guy coming off an injury that we believe is fine and he's going to recover 100% and be the player that he was, in which case I'm okay with that. I don't really have a problem drafting those guys, and maybe you budget in, he's just going to miss some time year one, versus is a guy now building an injury profile that I'm starting to get worried about. And I think that's the reason that Jordan Tyson is being talked about as a concern, because he's had a list of injuries, including a sequence of soft tissue injuries, which is the red flag that scares people. So that, I think, is where you start to get, I'm concerned about a guy with an injury profile. I'm not really concerned about a guy with a major injury, as long as, it's not going to be like Jalen Smith had a permanent problem because of that, right? So if your doctor is like, no, there's nothing permanent here based off this ACL or this, Achilles or whatever, then I'm comfortable enough taking that guy. What else was I going to say on that? Oh, and then concussions, I think, is its own unique thing, where honestly I don't really know enough about it to be certain, but there was a study recently that apparently concluded that there is literally no statistical connection between the number or severity of concussions and CTE, both in terms of the binary, do you have CTE, yes or no, and also how severe is your CTE on the scale of, you have it to this is horrific. The only thing that moves the needle is basically how long you've played the game, which is a proxy for how many times you've been hit in the head.
So you're getting hit in the head a lot.
Right, on a subconcussive
They don't
level.
count as a concussion, but it's just it all
Which
adds
isn't
up.
to say that concussions don't do anything or that they aren't a thing and they don't have, the symptoms can't create problems and leave you like certain guys where they're like, I need to walk away from the game right now because I haven't been able to shake these concussion symptoms for the last 6 months or whatever. But what it might mean is that if and when you take that break from the game and you come back, like once you clear that, right? I took a break for 6 months, I'm back. You might not actually be any worse off than you were before they were a problem, right? And you could point to Tua right now and say, Tua, people were saying he should walk away from the game after the last major concussion he had, right? And they lingered for a while, like that man maybe one hit away from just never playing again. And he's been okay since that point. Now he's been a bad football player, but concussion-wise, it hasn't been a problem. And other sports rather. Kalen Darris for the Ireland rugby team, there was a sequence where he had to shut himself down for a serious extended period of time because concussion symptoms were becoming a problem, and he couldn't shake them. And he did that, and he's been back, and he's been like an Iron Man since he came back. The concussions have not been a problem. I don't think he's had another concussion since that point, or at least they certainly haven't been a major part of his issue. So you're certainly scared about a guy that's had a major concussion run in college or whatever, and that's part of his profile. But if he's gotten past that and is still a prospect, I don't know that it's necessarily – I'm not even sure I would put it in the same bucket as like concerning injury history, but it's definitely its own thing that maybe a third bucket relative to these other two.
Yeah, and the last we didn't talk about the quarterbacks that were injury prone. Tua was in there, right? Like he would get banged up in college, and it kind of carried over to the NFL, even if you don't include the concussions. Like he's been nicked up a little bit. And then Michael Penix Jr., I think the most obvious example with the multiple knee surgeries. Peyton Wilson, by the way, is another one. Did I add him to this list? On my new list, I didn't add it. Peyton Wilson was like, this dude's had 17 surgeries since high school or whatever it was. But I don't think he's had injury issues with the Steelers. He's just in and out.
There was also that weird
rotation.
rumor that he didn't have an ACL at all, wasn't there?
Who needs one?
Yeah.
Ricky Leday didn't have a hamstring. Former baseball player.
That feels like a problem.
Former pitcher didn't have a UCL. He was missing the Tommy John ligament, and he was fine.
Don't you need that?
Apparently he didn't. But yeah, Penix obviously has a knee injury in year 2 and might be an issue.
Yes.
Any conclusions on this other than
again that
it's like case by
I'm not concerned by one major injury unless your doctors are saying this is a permanent debilitating problem from here on in. If a guy has got an injury profile, like if you have to give me a folder, here's his injury history. Now I'm worried.
I hate using one-off examples, but remember Fred Taylor was called Fragile Fred his first couple of years. He got hurt in 98, 99. He missed most of the season. And then by like 01 through the rest of his career, he was durable.
Right. There are people that argue there's no such thing as injury-prone players. There are just guys that have been unlucky, right? Guys that have had a sequence of things that injured them one after another. That can't be true to me. There are too many players where it's like normal things seem to injure that guy that don't injure other people. There's also people like Brett Favre where you could have dropped that guy off a cliff and not hurt him. Like there are people at the other end of the scale where like no matter what you do to them, they don't break. So I feel like there has to be something to some guys are more durable than other guys. But I also think there's a massive gray area in the middle where some guys have been unlucky and get thrown into this bucket, and actually they may just be unlucky players.
I think players like Josh Allen and Anthony Richardson are fascinating because they're similarly sized, and Richardson's been hurt 5 times in his career, like missed time due to injury 5 times, and he's barely been in the league. Josh Allen gets crushed every single week, and this year he had his most extensive injury. He's had his arm ripped off and everything, and he threw through it. He had a foot injury last year where they said he could barely even walk. He played through it, didn't really affect his play.
That's the other complicating factor, right, is that what about the players They just have a higher pain tolerance than
threshold,
others.
yeah.
Or, are you injured or are you hurt? Because
Yeah.
everybody's hurt in November and December, right? But most people are right there playing through it. Are you shutting it down every time you're hurt? So you've got injury prone versus unlucky. You've also got, is the guy actually willing to gut through these things that other people would say no mas to, or is he going to shut himself down? And I don't even know what the right answer to that is. Like, if in this world of, maximize your earning potential and, don't curtail your career unnecessarily, maybe the right thing is to shut yourself down. Like, again, the Baker Mayfield thing.
Yeah.
That dude played hurt for an entire year, and it cost him a $100 million contract, in my opinion. So, kudos to his toughness for gutting through it. Having said that, it probably cost him a ton of money.
Yeah, agreed. No definitive conclusion here. A lot of good players have come out, and a lot of players have, missed time. I think each injury situation is going to be different, and you see how much those injuries might linger, or they're just one-off unlucky deals.
These are all reasons, though, where it's like, I don't know who has, I don't know if anybody has final say, but like in a world where, you get hurt, right? I'm dealing with an ankle injury. I'm definitely not 100% coming into this game. I want to play, right? Maybe the coach wants me to play. Maybe the doctor wants to shut me down. Maybe I want to shut me down. You know what I mean? Like, there's this whole world where it's like, there's at least 3 different people involved in the decision of whether or not you're playing the next week or not. And they might have different motivations and ideas about what the correct answer to that is or not. And somewhere there manifests a yes or no, whether he starts the game or not, and we determine whether he's injured or not based off the back of that. Like, there's this whole weird gray area of it's all down to motivations and desires and who actually wants to do it or not.
I think that's why it's tough to just use games missed as like, this guy's injured. Because you get hurt at the end of the season, you miss fewer games. If you're out for the year, there's a lot of, and sometimes you just play through it.
Because there's a big thing in soccer at the moment of the sort of warring between a manager, a head coach, who obviously always wants the players to be playing, and the medical staff who are like, this guy's getting close to the red line in the data, which says somewhere along the line he's going to pull a hamstring. Maybe he doesn't play this week. And the doctor, like, their motivation is just to keep the squad as healthy as humanly possible, effectively, right? Whereas the coach is out here going, I need to win football games. I need all my players playing. You're like, is he hurt now? Yes or no? No. Well, then he's playing. But the doctor's like, yeah, but he's not hurt now. But the data is saying he's in the red zone and he's about to pop an ACL, so we're going to shut him down, right? So now, and that gets into the load management world of everything. Like, I don't think the NFL is really dealing with that at the moment. But the point is, the motivations are not necessarily the same. So the coach might want this guy out there playing. Maybe the player, the medical staff is like, shut him down. It's not going to get better.
That's a real question. My old trainer, Mike Boyle, used to train NFL Combine players and Mike Mamula and the whole thing.
Right.
And I always said, I hate the workout program that my team has. And he's like, well, the team has to make one for 150 minor leaguers and 40 major leaguers, and their goal is don't get hurt.
Yeah.
Your goal is throw
Be
harder
good.
and maximize. Right. So I'm over here doing like single leg squats, and he's like, you can never do that. Well, you just got to do the safest thing possible as a team. And so you do have, inconsistent motivations, as you're saying. All right, last debate we're going to go through here that we've had through the years. Would you rather have just a good tackle or an elite guard? We've had this debate many times through the years, famously for us, if anybody's been with us since 2018, was Quentin Nelson. You bring that up often. We said Quentin Nelson, prototypical elite-looking guard, but we think he's so good the dude could play tackle if you asked him to, should you. Other players through the years, Brandon Scherf came out of Iowa as a tackle and immediately got moved to guard as a top 5 pick. Peter Skoronsky a couple years ago, short arms, and I made the pitch that he played tackle at Northwestern, and even with the short arms, I think he could do it. Let him start at tackle and fail to guard if you need to.
Yeah.
But what does the data say?
Another couple of names that just came to mind as we were doing this. Zach Martin was one where obviously it's sort of forgotten about a bit because he just became a Hall of Fame caliber guard. But there were people that wanted to play him at tackle, and he moonlighted there for a couple of games during his career and looked like he could have been a really good tackle as well. So Zach Martin would have been one of, what if he had gone out to tackle? Would he have still looked like a Hall of Famer? And then Marshall Yanda, who is a Hall of Fame caliber guard, started his first year? He played at right tackle. Again, looked like he could have been a Pro Bowl caliber offensive tackle as well. The Ravens moved him back into guard, and he was a Hall of Fame caliber player there as well. But again, did they miss out on having a Hall of Fame caliber tackle as well?
All right, so I've run the data on this, and it's a really close, Sam. So I looked at historic players using my PVM numbers that were considered average. So if the difference between a legitimately average tackle and a plus guard, it's the guard. The guard wins no matter what. I gave the tackle a little bit of leeway, so I said solid or average. Solid for me is slightly above average player. So those players would be like Luke Gedeke, Deion Dawkins, Orlando Brown, Darnell Wright, Rob Havenstein, Mike McGlinchey. Those guys are in the solid bucket over the course of their entire careers. Pretty good tackles. The average bucket would be Alaric Jackson, Darrell Williams, Paris Johnson, Colton Miller over the course of his career because he started out poor and it just evened off. Braxton Jones, those are average tackles. I think if we're just saying, like, if you knew that Quentin Nelson would become an average tackle, would you rather have Braxton Jones or Quentin Nelson, the guard? The answer is the guard. They bring more value to the table. Where it gets closer, though, when you add the solid players, so more solid tackles like Deion Dawkins, I mentioned those players. Bernard Ryman, Gedeke, those solid tackles tighten it up just a little bit. But I'm voting elite guard now. Quentin Nelson, Joe Thuney, Chris Lindstrom, Quinn Miners, Shaq Mason when he was at his best, Tyler Smith, Landon Dickerson. Those players are bringing slightly more value on a per-game basis. And the other part is, and I think Mohall mentions this a little bit, the delta between good guards and like awful guard. The awful guard play is as detrimental, maybe more than tackles. And so the above average guard brings more value overall.
Yeah, and again, we go back to this idea of there's power to the confidence level you have that the player you're talking about is an elite guard, right? Like, we're having the conversation because Quentin Nelson was seen universally as one of the best offensive linemen to come into the NFL in a long, long time. So the confidence that he will be an elite level guard is very high relative to the random guy that you're going to take at that spot being even an average offensive tackle. Like, he might suck. He might not be good at all.
Yeah, we don't know. I mean, you don't know about this. So this brings up the Francis Maui-Noah question. And our friend Brandon Thorne had him as the second best guard on his board. Renner loves Maui-Noah as a guard.
Yeah.
Even Will Campbell last year. If you thought Will Campbell, if your projected outcomes, who knows how confident you are, but if your projected outcomes were high-end guard, high-end plus elite, however you want to call him, guard or average tackle, what would you choose? I think it's a legitimate debate now that you choose the guard. And most of the time, my thinking's always been maybe the average tackle is better. And I've changed a little bit more to if I could guarantee, confidence level wise, if I could guarantee Thuney level guard play, Quentin Nelson level guard play, I would choose that over trying those guys at tackle.
Yeah, so I think, again,
average results.
The evolution of the thinking, I think if you have, like, if we had a Quentin Nelson coming into this draft again, which a guy who'd been a college offensive guard, elite level prospect, and we're saying he's so good at that, why not move him out to tackle and see if he's good there? Because even if he's average, it's better. I think the thinking at the time was move him to tackle and let's see, right? And then if he's not, we can move him into guard and all's good. I think now the thinking would be, unless you're really, really convinced that he's not just average at tackle, but is good, leave him where he is and just let him dominate inside.
Yeah.
What I don't think it does is necessarily help in, say, this year's draft, where you've got a bunch of guys and it's like, well, he just might not be a tackle, therefore let's move him into guard. It's like, yeah, he also just might not be great at guard either.
Right.
Because the kind of debate is elite guard with high confidence versus average tackle. And what if you've got a guy who just might be a bit of a tweener, and you're like, where are we best off putting this guy? Do we try him at tackle because it's more valuable? Do we try him at guard because it's probably the better spot for a guy with short arms or, potentially limited movement, reactive movement skills? That's probably more of a muddy picture where you're just like, eh.
So, yeah, I've come around on this one, Sam, a little bit more. It's close, though. It's not, like, completely definitive.
Yeah.
But, again, given the choice, knowing what you know. And by the way, we may have been the only ones debating this Quentin Nelson thing,
Right.
Because we were thinking about it at the time. But it did come up because I think it was right around the time Anthony Costanzo was retiring, and they had an offseason decision when he was already in the league. And we were debating, well, what if they did just kick Nelson out to tackle and then found a replacement guard? What would be, or would you rather try to kick Nelson out to tackle, find a guard, or would you rather find a tackle and keep Nelson where he was? Like, it was an honest debate that we would have as far as a Colts team building decision.
Also, at the time, it was kind of the nadir of guards being devalued at the NFL.
Right.
They were in the running back bucket, and all of a sudden, guards are getting a ton of money. Like, the position has been revalued, if it was devalued. So the debate is changing, I think. Like, it's no longer guards now, draft capital is maybe still devalued, but certainly from a financial point of view, you're no longer being like, man, these guys are bargains. Let's think about if it's worth playing him here. Like, you're paying guards a ton of money. So if you find a good guard, he's absolutely worth it. Maybe the question is still, can you draft that guy at 4 overall? At which point I think the answer is still yeah. Like, if you find a guy that's that good, draft him wherever you want.
Ironically, the Colts are on the other end of this, where they took guard Braden Smith.
Yeah, moved him to
tackle, where I have him as an average to solid guard over the course of his career. Not to say that he would have been an elite guard.
So that's the question.
Right? We don't know for sure, but it would have been interesting. Like, if that was on the table for the Colts, would you have had him as right guard this entire time?
Yeah.
As a plus player, if you could guarantee it, versus him being an average to solid tackle?
I mean, he would be the perfect case study if we knew what he played like at guard to any degree. But
Right.
the problem is, he was a second-round player. He was not a guy that was going to go in the top 10 because we were so certain that no matter what happened, he was going to be an elite player. Maybe the Texans end up playing him at guard, and we get an answer to whether he would have been an elite player there, or at least another data point. But he's a guy who has been the average offensive tackle, who was at one point a guard. We just don't know how he would have played at guard over his time in the NFL.
That's all we have for those. I've enjoyed this discussion. You enjoying this?
Yeah.
I'm having fun. Mm-hmm. These are like things that just been pent up through the years that we've touched on a little bit, that I just wanted to get all out there on one show. And again, a lot of it applies to, I think, this draft class and different theories. If there's something we've missed that you guys want to talk about, like, should you ever draft a kicker? Talking about kickers here. Should you draft a kicker in the first round?
No.
Like Sebastian Janikowski. Any other draft myths, axioms, discussion points, things that we've talked about a lot that we did not either come to a conclusion. Mohal wants me to debunk the value of the left tackle really quick again for the millionth time, but let me do it again. Not saying to you, Mohal, but because people don't listen. The blind side isn't real. It's not blind when you're throwing to the left. Your blind side switches. So there's my case for the right tackle being as valuable as the left tackle. The best pass rushers in the NFL line up on both sides. So the right tackle has just as difficult of a job as the left tackle. Job description, equal. The blind side is not more valuable because when we thought it was, teams were more right-handed. Right-handed quarterback drops back, and most of the passes were to the right side, and your blind side was the left tackle.
There was a period
when
of
you
time,
drop back to throw, the passes evenly are distributed across the NFL to the middle of the field, to the right side of the field, but also to the left side of the field.
Yeah. There was a period of time where the only quarterback in the NFL that had an even distribution of throws to the left and the right-hand side of the field was Peyton Manning. Everybody else lent more to their strong side.
And we grew up, through high school football and even in college, righties usually threw to the right more. Right? That's what they did.
Like, Peyton Manning was the only guy that didn't for a period of time.
And so now offenses
changed.
are more balanced. And if I look to my left, I know it'll be inverted on me. If I look to my left, all of a sudden the blind side's being protected by my right, by the right tackle. And that's why you see like Von Miller can blindside somebody back when he was rushing the passer. TJ Watt can blindside somebody in strip sack because you're looking to your left. So the read will determine where the blind side is. Therefore, the tackles are just as important on both sides. That's why we had the Penei Sewell debate, is because you don't have to move him to the left side because all of a sudden you're making your line better. Right. It's just a matter of the goal is to have two good tackles. What's the best combination? So the left side itself, the left tackle itself, is overrated in value. And by the way, the league's catching up to this. They started paying right tackles. Since I wrote an article on this back in 2013, it started to catch up.
There's also, I think, still a scarcity of right tackles relative to left tackles. So if you have a really good right tackle, don't move him because there aren't as many.
I said what you should do is look at this for edge rushers and say it actually, because the NFL still probably puts their best pass protector at left tackle, not always. Myles Garrett's guys who rush off the right side actually have a harder job going against left tackles. So it affects those guys more than I think left tackles and right tackles are affected. Yes, lucrative. It's all based off of, my facts are every passing number when pressure came, when I studied it, when pressure comes from the left tackle versus the right tackle, there's no difference in forced fumble rate or yards per attempt or sack rate or anything. Like none of the numbers change significantly. So when the right tackle or left tackle loses, it doesn't affect the quarterback in either direction. Pressure from the interior affects the quarterback slightly more, but it happens way less. So that's the other variable there, where it's like interior pressure affects quarterbacks more, but it happens like a third of the time.
Yeah.
So doesn't mean you just put all your best pass protectors at guard or center. They're going to win more often because they're on the interior, and they could get to double team more often. So it's all based off of facts. Even distribution of where passes are going, no greater effect on pressure between left and right tackle. And if anything, the right tackles might have even better pass rushers to block than the left tackles in today's NFL, based off where they line up. Mm-hmm. All right. We got to get to so that's another myth that we had to do. Quick break to talk about our friends over at Root Insurance. Root Insurance believes that good drivers deserve better rates, so they've created a new kind of car insurance that rewards good drivers in an easy-to-use app. Traditional car insurance companies focus on demographics like age, zip code, occupation, and credit score to price your coverage, but when Root offers a rate, your behavior behind the wheel gets more weight than any other single factor. They don't use occupation or education level to negatively affect your rate. While you drive, Root gathers and analyzes data from your smartphone sensors, and after a few weeks, you get a car insurance quote based primarily on your driving. Save up to 44% off your initial Root quote after you take the test drive. Need a tow truck, jump start, or lock your keys in the car? Root will cover the help you need to get back on the road when you opt into roadside assistance. The Root app makes it easy to edit your coverage, update your policy, or file a claim in just 3 minutes. You get started today at Root.com. Today we're providing roadside assistance for the New York Giants, Sam, because Dexter Lawrence has requested a trade.
Yeah.
No one has hyped up Dexter Lawrence more than us over the last couple of years, but he's coming off a down year and really an injury-riddled last couple seasons. Is this the right move for the Giants to move on from Dexter Lawrence?
Yeah, I mean, he's dealt with an elbow injury for the last year or so that's definitely dimmed his production and made him not quite as dominant as he's been in the past. So, I mean, the big question I think for them is, where is that? You know, is this a long-term problem for him? Is this something that we can get him healthy this offseason and next year he goes back to being the most dominant force? Dexter Lawrence, that's question. That's the first thing I think they need to answer. If the answer to that is, look, he's never going to be the same guy again, this is going to be a diminished version of Dexter Lawrence, then I would trade him away. If he's going to get back to being the player he was, I'm not moving that guy for anything.
Yeah, and all the numbers that we used to pull out on Dexter Lawrence, not just the pressures where he was 3X, 4X, the rest of the league, pressures from the nose tackle alignment. So either A gap, either zero tech head up on the center or as a shade. He was 2X, 3X, 4X pressure totals and top 3 in pressure rate despite the high volume, right? Completely different player. Also, I don't think he's exclusively a nose tackle. He can move around the defensive line when he's healthy. He's outstanding. If the Giants do trade him, though, all of a sudden that's a massive hole at defensive tackle. Not just his spot; they already had questions at defensive tackle.
Yeah,
I think if the injuries are an issue, though, Sam, it might be the right time to move on.
Yeah, if they are, sure. If they're not, though, I don't care that he's late into his 20s. I mean, we're seeing a spate of defensive tackles playing their best football deep into their 30s, let alone deep into their 20s. I mean, Calais Campbell is still good, and is he 40 now? Cameron Hayward is still playing like one of the best defensive tackles in the NFL. He's deep into his 30s. Like, you could have 10 more years of Dexter Lawrence the way current defensive tackles are trending. And he's one of the few defensive tackles in the NFL capable of individually taking over games. Like, he won the game where the Giants got to the playoffs and then upset the Vikings. They won that game because of Dexter Lawrence.
Yes.
Like, that's not usual. A defensive tackle is rarely the reason a team is winning a playoff football game. Dexter Lawrence individually determined that they were going to win that game, not the Minnesota Vikings. So like he's one of those players, and I'm not trading away those guys unless I'm concerned that he's no longer that player.
He's also such a fascinating player, Dexter, because you could argue as a nose tackle he's a better pass rusher than run defender. He's fine against the run, but last year, again, his worst season in a long time, probably since his rookie season, or maybe even ever, his worst season, and the run defense was awful, right? The argument against Dexter Lawrence is like, man, this is one of the worst defenses in the league, and usually start your run defense. You look at your nose tackle, you look at your linebackers, you look at how you set the edge, but having an elite nose tackle and still giving up, against the run the way the Giants did last year, not a good endorsement of Dexter Lawrence, but he's a better pass rusher probably than a run defender.
Yeah, he is.
But he's normally good against the run when he's healthy as well.
It also, we know better than that, right? Like people made that argument with Aaron Donald as well. Like good, elite, best
Hear what
players
I said,
in the
Sam.
NFL.
I didn't say bad. I said better than.
But other people, the argument that, well, their run defense as a whole was bad, therefore Dexter Lawrence makes no difference is ridiculous, right? I'm not saying that's the argument you're making. I'm saying that's the argument other people will make. People made that argument for Aaron Donald when the Rams had bad run defense. It's like, or even just a bad defense, an average defense. How good can Aaron Donald be if this defense is average or below average in certain areas? And the answer is as good as any player that's ever played the game, right? Like that's the power of weak link systems on defense, that you can literally have the best football player that's ever played at his position, and it will not matter if some other players are terrible, right? Like that's the problem you're dealing with on defense. That doesn't mean that guy isn't A, really good, and B, really valuable. You just need other work to happen before you realize that value. That's, I'm not saying Dexter Lawrence is the best defensive player that's ever played, but he is a genuine elite difference maker. And just because the Giants' defense last year wasn't very good does not stop that being true.
So with Carver in the chat, member, asked thoughts on Dexter Lawrence to Seattle. Keep up the good work, lads.
Their problem would be draft picks to give up.
They feel loaded at defensive tackle.
Look, Dexter Lawrence makes every team in the NFL better, and every team should be looking at ways to acquire him. The problem Seattle would have is they're already extremely low on draft picks, and if you had to then throw more at Dexter Lawrence, you're in that world of you got to bankfill that some way.
Yeah, and look, I know you mentioned, Calais Campbell's 40. Everybody's different, but he'll turn 29 during the season, heading into year 8 in the NFL. He's getting a little bit older. I think it's tough to give up a 1 for Dexter Lawrence, given the injury history, him getting a little bit older. But, man, he does help every team. And if in a weaker draft, if you're talking about a late 1 or a second rounder that you could give up to get him, I'm very interested in that. If I have a defensive tackle question.
If he checked out medically, I'd give up a first in a heartbeat for him.
If I'm the Giants, it's a way to reset and get younger. But, man, I think one of their advantages was always going to be healthy Dexter Lawrence, Abdul Carter, Kayvon Thibodeau as long as he's there, plus Brian Burns. Like, that's supposed to be their edge. And once you start messing around with that, I understand getting younger, getting more cost-controlled, but you lose that potential edge of what the defensive line was supposed to be with Dexter Lawrence.
Yeah. They've said they don't want to trade him away. I believe them. I wouldn't want to trade him away either. It's a contract negotiation deal again. It's really just the medical, right? Are you happy that his elbow injuries are going to be in the past, in which case sign him long-term, lock him down, don't trade him away. If you're not, get rid of him now before somebody else notices.
Someone mentions the Ravens, and because we have the counterfactual that the Ravens at one point in life were willing to give up 2 first-rounders for Max Crosby, you could always play this. Would you rather give up your 2 firsts for 1 Max Crosby or keep, will you trade one of those future firsts for Dexter Lawrence? Would you rather have Trey Hendrickson and Dexter Lawrence or 1 Max Crosby? Yeah. We could play this game a lot with the Ravens because we know what they would have. No offense to Max Crosby, all of the alternatives look really, really strong here for the Ravens, which was don't make the trade. You signed Hendrickson. You keep those 2 first, or if you flipped 1 for Dexter Lawrence, all of those look like better options than just having the 1 Max Crosby.
Yeah, you could use I would use the 14, is it 14 or 15 they picked?
14.
I would use 14 overall on Dexter Lawrence. Dexter Lawrence and Trey Hendrickson, and I don't have the 14th overall pick anymore. I'm 100% fine with that if I'm the Ravens.
What's his really quick cap situation? Because again, trading for a player, if bonus is accounted for. So he's signed through 27, so you're going to get 2 years out of him. But the base salary is minimal. Like trading for him, and you're getting him for 18.5 base and 18 base next year, which is very, very cheap at defense for what he could potentially provide. You get some roster bonus stuff next year and per game bonuses, but it would not be too much. Cap number would be around 21 to 22, I think.
Yeah. Problem is, I think at the moment it's a contract negotiation, so wherever you go, you're going to need to re-up him, I think.
No, I know. Then, you're trying to say, okay, how are we signing him through his age 32, 33 season? That's the question for Lawrence. All right, there's your roadside assistance for the Giants. Go get a 1 or keep him. Or just keep him. You'd keep him because you'd give up a 1 for him.
Yep.
All right, that's it for us today. It's a long show. Good times, though. I enjoyed it. I hope you did. I hope you guys all did. Just we had a lot to get off our chest here today. Go back, rehash old arguments, old discussions. I'm going to give you the day off tomorrow.
Great.
I'm going to be here by myself with John Ledyard talking edge rushers. Edge rush prospects tomorrow. We'll be ranking them with John Ledyard. We'll be back on Monday, my mock draft.
Hopefully back on Monday. Otherwise, things will go badly wrong.
Yeah. You doing this in a day here?
No, because I'm going to have to start getting out of there. I mean, it'll be late tomorrow by the time I get moving, so I'll try and knock out a couple of hours and then stay somewhere and then do the rest of it on Friday.
Yeah. Okay. So you're going to get your car. All right.
Trying to get a 65 Mustang across the country, solo. See how that goes.
It's not that far.
It's 10 hours.
Yeah, 10's not bad.
Yeah, it's not bad when you're driving a car that was built like a week ago. It's probably quite a way when you're driving something that was built in 1965.
You wish you're in a fresh 26 Odyssey like I am.
No, I mean, I would prefer to drive the 65 Mustang, assuming it drives the whole 10 hours. If it doesn't, that's the problem.
Just a risk you have to be willing to take. Yeah, what are you doing with the Camaro?
TBD.
Okay.
At the moment, it's staying, but the reason I started looking at cars in the first place. Can you borrow the Camaro?
Yeah.
No. The reason I started looking at cars in the first place is because I'm getting kind of sick of just a permanent dumping of money into the Camaro to fix various things that keep falling off on it. So I may end up getting a different second car as a day. I'm going to try dailying the 65 Mustang and see how it goes. Now, maybe that will be a catastrophic decision, and I'll have to buy some other, crap box to keep going.
Are you live tweeting this? Are you going to be...
I mean, I'll be live tweeting if I'm at the side of the road.
For our members on YouTube, maybe?
Yeah.
We'll get some footage of you driving across the country?
I can have footage, yeah.
Okay. Do that for our members. Drop it on the YouTube.
Some engine revs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the engine... Yeah, that's the real good stuff. Everybody will sign up for that.
Toolman Taylor style.
Do the grunting. Do the whole thing. All right. Is that it for us today? I think that's it.
Yeah.
Appreciate everybody for being here. We'll see you again tomorrow, 9 a.m. with more. Check the mic.